Morning, Chairman. We're live now.
Okay, Nick, thank you. So good morning and welcome to this online meeting of the Public Protection and Communities Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Nigel Pepper and I am Chairman of this committee. This is a formal public meeting and the audio feed of this meeting is being broadcast via the County Council's website. I would like to welcome members of the press and public who are listening to this online. Before we begin, I would like to confirm who is present. Nick Harrison, the Democratic Services Officer, will ask members to indicate their presence after their name is called. When invited to speak, you should unmute your microphones and switch on your video. When you are not participating in the meeting, please make sure you have muted your microphone and switched off your video. Nick, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Stokes.
Present.
Councillor Aaron. Councillor Aaron. Councillor Clark.
Here.
Councillor Mrs. Cooper. Councillor Mrs. Lawton. Councillor Mrs. Lawton. I think I saw you earlier.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Oxby.
Present.
Councillor Turner. Councillor Mrs. Wootton.
Good morning, present.
Thank you. Councillor Ray Wootton.
Present.
Councillor Worth. Councillor Barry. Barry Young, sorry.
Yeah. Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Woolley. Councillor Corey.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Bootroyd. Councillor Thompson. I think that's all, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that. Sounds like someone's grandfather clock is sounding in the background. We didn't get a response from Councillor Aaron, but I seem to have his name at the bottom there. Maybe he's there.
Yeah, I think he's on a call. It says he's on a call.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Yeah. Okay, so has anyone not had their name called out who is attending today? If so, please type in the chat bar now, please. No, we seem to have everyone. Okay, just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. I'd like to ask members of the committee and other participants to type "speak" in the chat when you wish to ask a question or make a contribution. Our Vice Chairman Adam will be keeping an eye on that. Also, just a reminder, please turn off your microphone when not participating in the meeting. Can I also ask that members who are intending to leave the meeting indicate using the chat function? Officers do not need to do so. We'll now move on to the formal agenda. So agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. Nick, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We've just got one apology from Councillor Ms. Cook.
Okay, thank you. I understand Councillor Lawton's got to leave at 11 o'clock. Okay, thank you. Item 2, declarations of members' interest. Do members have any interest to declare? If so, please type "speak" in the meeting chat now.
Present.
Councillor Aaron said present.
Yes, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Aaron. So we're at declarations of members' interest. If anyone's got any, please put in the chat bar now. I'll just give that a second or two. No, it doesn't appear to be any. Okay, so agenda item 3 is minutes of the previous meeting held on the 27th of October. This item is to confirm the minutes of our previous meeting as a correct record. So I'll just go through the pages. You can start on page 5. Just for accuracy only, page 5, page 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and finally page 12. Can I ask for a proposer and a seconder for those, please?
Happy to propose, Chairman. Councillor Wotton.
So Councillor Linda Wotton's proposed.
I'll second, Chairman. Councillor Ron Oxby here.
Okay, thank you. We'll now vote on those minutes. You're voting on whether you agree that the minutes are a correct record. Nick will call out the name of each member present in alphabetical order, and you're asked to state for, against, or abstain. So again, over to you, Nick.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Aaron. Councillor Aaron, for or against?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Cooper. Councillor Mrs. Lawton. Councillor Mrs. Lawton, are you for or against?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Oxby.
For.
Thanks. Councillor Pepper.
For.
Councillor Stokes.
For.
Councillor Turner. Councillor Mrs. Wotton.
For.
Councillor Ray Wotton.
For.
Thank you. That's unanimous of those present, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So those minutes are agreed. Agenda item 4, announcements by the chairman, executive councillors and chief officers. There's no announcements from myself. Executive councillors, have you got any announcements to make, please?
Nothing from me, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Worth.
No from me, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Young. Okay, are there any chief officer announcements, please?
Nothing from myself, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Mark. Okay, we'll swiftly move on then to item 5, which is the service level performance reporting against the performance framework 2020 to 2021, quarters 1 and 2. This item sets out the performance of the Tier 2 service level performance measures for 2021-22, quarters 1 and 2, that are within the remit of the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee. I think I'm right in saying this report will be presented by Sarah Barry, also Nicole Hilton, and also Mark Baxter. Which one of you would like to go first? In your own time.
Morning, Councillor Pepper. It's Di Coulson. I've taken over now from Sarah in relation to the Assistant Director role for Public Protection. So if it's in order with yourself, I can give the update around the public protection matters.
Okay, please do then, Dawn. You go first. Yeah, thank you.
Lovely, thanks very much. So if I just talk you through some of the exceptions to start with. So the first ones are in relation to the Stay Safe days for secondary schools and the inputs into primary schools. You'll see from the performance data that both of those are an exception and the target's not achieved. Now, with both of those, the reason for that is because of the COVID pandemic. You'll be aware that schools were closed for much of the first half of the last half of last school year, which meant that a lot of the sessions couldn't be delivered. Now, had we been on track and the sessions not been cancelled, certainly in the secondary schools, we were on track to achieve 93% of secondary schools with that. In relation to both the primary schools and the secondary schools, we are now that schools are back open, we are delivering virtual sessions. So those inputs are now taking place. So that prevention information is now getting through to pupils. So that's in relation to the Stay Safe days. Are you happy for me to move on, or are there any questions on that before I do?
I just note we've got a Councillor Wotton wishing to speak. Is that correct, Councillor Wotton? Councillor Ray Wotton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, my question is related to domestic violence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So at this stage, are there any questions from members on what Diane has just presented? No, none filtering through, so carry on.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next area I'll touch on is around the domestic abuse victims that are receiving support through the services commissioned by Lincolnshire County Council. And that obviously relates to independent domestic violence advisors who support the high-risk victims of domestic abuse, and also the outreach service, the Ending Domestic Abuse Now in Lincolnshire, EDAN Links. And in relation to the numbers of adults and children that receive support from those services. You will see that that target is showing as not achieved. Now, as I understand it, we have still done a lot of work through the COVID pandemic in reaching out to supporting victims and their children that are impacted by domestic abuse. And that's been done virtually, and alternative ways have been found to actually manage getting support to victims. Now, as I understand it, the reason that the target isn't achieved is more down to some anomalies with the original target setting. So we do need to do some work around that. As I understand it, the target was set based on Q1 of the previous year, where unfortunately in error there was some double counting of some of the children that received support. So we're going to have to look at how we review that baseline, so that we can give you some accurate reporting on whether we're achieving that target or not. Hopefully that makes sense. And then obviously moving on to victims supported through MARAC. So this isn't a targeted performance measure, but actually just gives you the numbers of high risk victims of domestic abuse that have been supported through the MARAC process, which is the multi-agency risk assessment conference, which pulls together lots of different agencies to try and support victims that are at high risk of domestic abuse. That has been managed well through the COVID pandemic. Those meetings have started to take place virtually, and we've had a consistent number of referrals coming through. So we haven't seen necessarily a drop in those referrals through the pandemic. So we're confident that victims are getting that support. So that's in relation to domestic abuse. So again, I'll pause there in case there are any questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rayward, did you want to come in at this point, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve, Mr. Chairman. As you know, I'm always interested in the domestic violence reports. Nationally, they're talking about a 9% increase in incidents to about March this year. Can you tell me if that trend is shown in Lincolnshire? And also, these figures show the number of people receiving support. How are the figures reported to police showing? Are they showing an increase?
So I haven't got those figures in front of me, but as I understand it, as lockdown lifted, we did start to see more reports of domestic abuse, and as I believe the online services have seen a significant increase in requests for support services.
So out of those people that report to the police, what percentage have actually been seen by the police and actually translated into any sort of offences or help or assistance? Because they are different, aren't they?
Yeah, so anybody that reports domestic abuse to the police will have follow-up contact. I haven't got the exact percentage of how many crimes are recorded, because obviously there's domestic incidents and, as you rightly point out, domestic offences. So if you would like some further information on that, I can go and get you the more accurate figures. I don't have them in front of me at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Joan. That'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've got Claire Newborn. I wish to speak. I'll just take her first before we go to Councillor Lawton. So, Claire.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, just on the point that Councillor Wotton raised, I do have some data on that, Councillor Wotton, in terms of the those members of the public who approach the police and report an incident, and actually the percentage of those matters that then translate into charges and then go on to court. If you bear with me while I locate that in my folder, but I received that information only the other day, so I can provide you with a little bit more detail. What I can say is I do know that percentage wise we do book the trend in that there's a certain figure nationally in terms of conversion of reports to the police to charges, and actually we've exceeded that fairly significantly within Lincolnshire. So it's a positive news story, but I will get you the details as you progress through the paper.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, so maybe Claire, as we go through the report with the other directors and come back to you last, I'll give you time to do that. Vice Chairman Adam, am I right in saying we just got Councillor Lawton wishing to speak?
Thank you very much, Chairman, if I may. This has always been one of the great worries about lockdowns, about the increase in sort of tension. Domestic violence we always feared a great spike in cases. So I would like to say, well done to the teams for all the work they've done. Just looking at the paperwork, most of it, all it's been through telephone and video consultation, but face-to-face support is now resuming. I just want to say, how is that going? And what difference do you think actually face-to-face consultation makes to people? I'm more positive in my view, but how is it from the professionals? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question. I think in terms of the difference it makes, I think there's always better engagement when you can have a face-to-face conversation with somebody. There's just a better interaction. I haven't had any feedback as yet as to how it's going, but certainly I know that all the COVID secure measures will be put in place and making sure that everybody that is involved in those face-to-face sessions are as safe as possible.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Vice Chairman Adam, have we got any other members wishing to speak on this topic?
No, I can't see any other speakers, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the next presenter. Is that you, Mark? Mark, I think you might be on mute. Can't hear you.
Thank you very much, Chair, for pointing that out. I could have been on a roll there for quite a few minutes before I'd realised. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to go through the performance reporting for fire and rescue. The first area is in regards to the primary fires, and these are the fires that are involving the properties, vehicles, etc. What we've been seeing over the last quarter one and quarter two is that we've got a 10% reduction compared to quarter two last year. So that's a pleasing statistic. The biggest reduction has been seen in regards to vehicle fires that have been reduced. However, dwelling and vehicle fires do still account for the largest proportion of the incidents. And the most common cause within the primary fires is still the cooking, deliberate fires, electrical fires, etc. So there really is probably a key theme within our community fire safety strategy that is still focusing on cooking at home, etc. We've done some work, particularly in regards to the COVID period, because recognising that there's going to be more people working and being at home during this year. So that's been a real focus for our CFS campaigns across our social media platforms. And we've also been working quite closely with the National Farmers Union and the Rural Crime Partnership to look at farm-related incidents, and that contribution links into our fire prevention strategy. So we've always been conscious of the fact that this is it may have a slightly different impact this year because of the COVID and people's activities. So yes, it is a real positive that has been a reduction from this time last year. But when we look onto the next page, which is the page 24, gives us over a 5-year trend, we are still seeing a slight decrease in regards to primary fires. So the direction of travel is going in the right way, where we would like to see it. I'll pause for that. Is there any questions anybody would like to ask in regards to primary fires? Okay, thank you. So the next area is the fire fatalities in the primary fires. This is always, I would say, a fluctuating, volatile statistic, because we do still have relatively low fire fatalities within Lincolnshire, thankfully. So any instance we do have, it does spike it quite significantly now. So far this year, we've had 2 fire fatalities. So at this moment in time, we are, I always cautious of using the word target. It's really just in regards to just monitoring where we are with that. It's always going to be quite difficult to predict where we'd end up at the end of the year, but I would suggest it's within our tolerances as we expect of the amount of fatalities that we usually get year on year, which is really probably more articulated on page 26, which shows the 5-year data in regards to fire fatalities. And as you say, except for when we have the odd spike, and I say a spike, that's an additional 1 or 2 fatalities, it does roundabout go anywhere between 3 and 7 fatalities a year when we've had a very unfortunate year. In regards to the 2 that have happened so far this year, they're still under investigation with our work with the police at this moment in time. But what we do commit to their processes that we link into any organisational and community learning that we will work that within our ways of working, and we will share that as soon as we get those reports through. So unless there's any questions in regards to fire fatalities.
Just going back to those spikes, Mark, I noticed in 2016 and 17, in 2018, 19, a couple of spikes there, but I think I'm perhaps right in saying there's more than one person in the property concern, probably 2 or 3 people in the same property.
And that's it.
Am I right in thinking that?
And that's right. We've had a couple of incidents where they've just come from one event, but they've had multiple occupancies within the home. So it's a good point to raise there. It's not that we're not looking at multiple properties that are having fatalities.
Sure.
Unfortunately, on some of the occasions, we do have several people in the same property that does increase the statistics.
Yeah, I just want to be clear on that, Mark.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Yeah. I don't think there's anyone else wishing to speak at this point. So carry on then, Mark.
Okay. Next item is the deliberate primary fires. So again, we're just really teasing down which of the primary fires have been started deliberately. Again, what we've been seeing compared to this time last year is a 12% reduction in the deliberate primary fires. Again, the same themes is that the vehicles seem to be the most common type of the deliberate fires, accounting for nearly 45%. Our main focus of work and our partnership arrangements do link in within the arson task force and working closely with the police to identify trends and strategies. And when we're talking about trends, it's usually where they often move in locations sometimes around the county where we would particularly get some of those spikes. So I know there was a period of time where we was particularly looking at the northeast side of the county where we was getting quite a lot of vehicle fires. And actually, when we look at some of the trends, a lot of them do happen to occur on the borders of our counties. So it's often that people are coming into the county with vehicles and then setting fire to them. So we do working and we continue to work with the Arson Task Force and the police colleagues. But again, when we look on page 28 and we're looking at our 5-year trends analysis, again, that figure is declining. So it is going in the direction of travel where we would like it to go, albeit that we still need to work more to try and get that reduced as much as we possibly can on all of our deliberate primary fires. So again, just an opportunity to pause if anybody would like any questions on regards to deliberately primary fires.
Just from myself, Mark, I see year on year, despite a few blips, the rate is decreasing, so it's heading in the right direction there, I can see,
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think that is, I think in part it is because of our strong links that we have with the Arson Task Force and the campaigns and linking in with our stronger links with the police. I think that is making a difference in there.
Okay, thank you. Move on.
Okay, and then deliberate secondary fires. These are deliberate fires that don't involve properties in the main. So we are behind target. Have we seen a small increase in the number of deliberate secondary fires compared to this time last year? However, worth noting that we're only one incident outside of what we call our tolerance range, which is we always have a tolerance range as we recognise volatility. There's been some small fluctuations across each of the secondary fires property types, but no particular trend. The refuse and refuse containers still continues to be the most common type of incidents within the properties. And again, within our community fire safety teams, we're working with the arson task force. I think it's relatively early stage. We're still working through the data, but it's fairly confident in the fact that, again, the COVID element is going to have an impact in regards to this, because there will be more people at home. There'll be more people that's probably producing more refuse and refuse containers, and in the ways that people have been working and living over the last 6 months or so when we've been looking at this data. However, when we look at in regards to the page 30, again, when we're looking at the deliberate secondary fires on the actual numbers, that direction of travel is still slightly decreasing. So it is going in the right direction of travel, although we'd always like to see it going further in that direction. And the deliberately secondary fires for the actual numbers annual is fairly steady as well. So we're not seeing a 5-year increase. It is still going in the right direction, albeit we do recognise that this year we have seen an increase, but we'll see what that's going to be like at the end of the year. We are relatively confident that we'll still end up round about where our target would be. Okay, so again, before then, I'll just move on to our final target. Any questions in regards to deliberate secondary fires?
No, none coming up.
Okay.
So
Thank you for that. Again, so our accidental dwelling fires. This is the number of fires in dwellings that we've attended and determined that the cause of the fire was not known or accidental. So again, on this one, we are currently behind target from this time last year. Again, but we're only one incident outside of our tolerance range. So again, it's not something that's a significant red flag at this moment in time. So far, what we're looking at is still these incidents are cooking related yet again. So again, as I said right at the beginning in this report, that is one of our clearest focus for our community fire safety strategy, to focus on cooking. We've also got electrical items, which are both appliances and mains electrics, which is again still at 21%. So again, that is a cause for concern for us. The prevention team we are linked in with the national campaigns, and we're linking in with other partner agencies within the county to keep the messaging going about, especially about within the COVID environment, that people are working and being at home far more often. So I suppose it is not unexpected that we would have seen an increase in this, but again, it is a part of our campaign to ensure that people can work and live at home as safely as they possibly can. So we haven't got the 5-year data on that, unfortunately, at this moment in time. I suppose just for your information in regards to this as a scrutiny, we have had some challenges in regards to our data sets that's coming through our Vision 4 systems that have been worked through, and that links into our consortium. However, what I would like to say is that our performance and integrated risk management team have been working extremely hard to manually retrieve all of the data where it would normally be automated. So I would just like to thank them on behalf of the organisation. They have gone over and above to get these the data sets in the reporting when they've had some technical challenges over the last 6 months. It's fair to say so. So that really gives an overview of our reporting from fire. So again, if there's any questions from anyone, I'm happy to field them.
okay, thank you, Mark, for that. Councillor Stokes, Vice Chairman. I can't see anyone wishing to speak. Is there anyone there?
Can't see any indicators.
No. Okay. Okay, so thank you, Mark, for that presentation.
Thank you, Chair.
We'll now move on to the next speaker, please. Who's taking the libraries one? Is that not Nicole? Don't seem as though we've got anyone today to talk about the libraries. And similarly, heritage. Does anyone want to talk about heritage? So just sorry to put you on the spot, Councillor Worth. Is there anything you'd just like to bring to our attention, please?
No, well, I'd say if anybody's got any questions about any of those areas they want to ask, I'll do my best to respond, Chairman.
Okay, that's good of you to step in there. So have we got anyone wishing to ask any questions on both libraries and heritage? Doesn't appear so. It would appear that COVID has had a bit of an impact on some of those things, Councillor Worth.
Yeah, particularly with libraries. Obviously, we through that first lockdown, many of them all of them were closed down. But we have done a huge amount around click and collect, which has been hugely successful, actually. Yeah. So that's been a real bonus. But yeah, clearly that has an issue, particularly on the community hubs, which are run primarily by a lot of elderly volunteers, and obviously in some cases they've been reluctant to come out because of some of their ages. Some community hubs have been equally very keen to get out there and continue the service. So, yeah, generally it's been really good considering what we've had to go through.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Worth. Just going through the pages there on performance figures, we've got, after libraries and heritage, we've got the KSIs for road traffic collisions. I think we've got Steve Batchel with us. Is he with us right now? Perhaps you could take that.
Yeah, here, Councillor. If you're happy to, I'll cover it in my update.
Okay. That's further on in the agenda. And still in the performance figures, we've got illicit alcohol and tobacco products seized. Anyone taking that one? Trading standards?
Yeah, good morning. Oh, sorry, Sarah, were you going to come in there?
No, if you want to do it now, you can.
Thank you.
Okay, as long as one of you takes it.
Yeah, so you'll see in relation to the seizure of illicit alcohol and tobacco products, we've not quite achieved that target yet, target being 3,500 items, and the actual achieved is 3,200. And as you'll see from the report, again, this has been hugely impacted by COVID in the first quarter of the year, when multi-agency operations had to be postponed. And obviously in quarter two, there's been a huge upsurge in activity again, bringing us not quite to target, but some considerable way forward. And then just in relation to the unsafe products removed from market, again, not achieved this target, but again, that's largely due to the COVID pandemic, and a lot of focus was placed around PPE equipment, so making sure that masks, hand sanitizer, etc., were checked in terms of safety and compliance with regulations, and routine inspections weren't performed because of the COVID restrictions. So we are behind with that one, but obviously that was because we were supporting efforts around COVID and also because we had to suspend those routine operations. Yeah, and then moving on to the high risk premises, you'll see from that one that's actually achieving target and over. So I'll pause there for any questions.
Okay, I believe we've got some. What order have they come in, Councillor Stokes?
It was Councillor Kev Clark first, then Councillor Ray Wootton.
Okay, so Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just reading the papers on the illegal alcohol and tobacco products seized, it states as European standards. Are we going to carry on with European standards in the new year? Over.
Interesting one, Diane.
Yes, I think that Sorry, Sarah, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, do you want me to answer that one?
Sorry.
At this moment, Councillor Cott, we don't know. It will depend on the deal negotiations on the standards required. Obviously, to import into the single market, the goods will have to meet certain requirements. And likewise, if we accept any imports into the UK, standards will be set. At the moment, proposal is instead of a CE mark, we will have our own UK safety mark, and the standards are very similar at the moment, if not a direct duplication of European standards. But some of that detail will come through in the Brexit negotiations that are ongoing at the moment.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We've got Councillor Ray Wotton then, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Sarah, could you tell me, do you know where these, in particular the counterfeit goods, the alcohol and cigarettes are coming from? And are you aware of any statistics relating to people who have been injured or actually killed by drinking these illegal goods?
We get some really good reports, and we work really closely with the police licensing team in this area of work. And there are a group of shops in a number of towns which we are targeting through an intelligence-led process. And these tend to be your corner type shops. But also, if we tackle that really hard, and we're working with landlords as well to try and get repeat offenders evicted from those premises. We do know that sometimes, especially tobacco, we haven't found as much illicit alcohol recently. It's been more tobacco. Can move into the sale from individuals' private homes, what we terminology of as a fag house. More recently, we have had in the past some direct reports from A&E where people have drunk illicit substances and it has caused them illness. Fortunately, we've never had a death as far as we know in Lincolnshire, but there have been instances over the years where that has occurred in other parts of the country. Fortunately, in Lincolnshire, not. But as I say, the primary issue at the moment is tobacco rather than alcohol, although we're keeping our eye out for both.
So, Sarah, are these products mainly imported from abroad, or are there any homegrown products?
They are a mixture. They are a mixture of illicit, so that's tobacco that's not been, it shouldn't be illegally on the market, and often that is imported, or some of it is made through bulk purchase of tobacco and then broken down in the UK. Often a lot of it is hand rolling tobacco, so it's unbaled and packaged in the UK, and then the more non-duty paid tobacco. But our focus often is on the illegal tobacco.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I'll just go back to page 48. I know we're talking about Q1 and 2 this year, but you just can't go without mentioning the huge spike in year 2018, 2019 in Q3 and Q4. We probably spoke about it last year, but can you just refresh my memory why that went up so high there, please?
If I remember rightly, and I will need to check this out, I think that was, we did a project on storage containers, and I think that's when we found several large hauls of tobacco stored in storage containers. Oh, okay. We have repeated that occasionally, so I'm hoping that where we do find a pattern of activity, we put in place not only a sort of incident on the day, but also preventative measures moving forward, such as stronger controls on storage, and also on such as the work we're doing with landlords of these corner shops.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. The next thing we got is volunteering community groups. Are you taking that one too? Anyone there to take that? No one coming forward. Can't see any questions. Okay, so Claire, we'll just go back to Claire. Did you find what you was looking for, Claire?
I certainly did, Chairman. So in response to Councillor Wotton's query, this isn't quite comparable to the data that you've received, which is obviously for Q1, Q2 this year. So what I'm describing is incidents, domestic abuse incidents, year ending March 2020. Now, as I said, there's 73% of domestic abuse incidents have then translated in Lincolnshire, have translated into a charge, so recorded as a crime. And actually, as I say, that compares really favourably with the national comparison of 59%. That's obviously one stage of the process. So actually, there's then the charge. What we do know as partners is we do monitor this really closely. So nationally, again, what we do know is that even after charge, there's actually quite a fairly sizable drop-off but from victims who then withdraw either their statements or support for a conviction. So between the charge and the appearance in court, we sometimes lose victim support to proceed with the case. As I say, that's not a localism. That's national. And one of the things that Eden Links do very well as our domestic abuse support service is support those victims from point of charge all the way up to and during the court process. And that's one of the reasons why we do that, is to ensure that as best we can, those victims feel sufficiently supported through that process, which can be a fairly daunting process, to actually improve the outcomes at court. But in response to your query, Councillor Wotton, in terms of Lincolnshire Police's part in that process, it works out very favourably compared to the national comparison.
Thank you, Chairman. I know in some forces they actually proceed with a charge, even though the victim, the injured party, would like to withdraw their statement. Is that something that this force has looked at?
And that does happen. So we do have incidents or charges that for offenders, perpetrators who then appear in court, and that case has been proceeded without the support of the victim, because actually the evidence and the view of CPS and Lincolnshire Police is that it's in the public's interest to proceed. So that is explored, and where that is deemed appropriate, that is progressed in that way.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to comment?
I can't see any further comments in this speech.
Okay, let's give it another second or two. Okay, so we'll move on. So the actions are to the committee is invited to review and comment on the performance information contained in this report and highlight any recommendations or further actions for consideration. I take it, Nick, you've got everything down there that we've highlighted.
Yes, I have. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So I'll actually propose that the committee receives the report and notes the performance for quarters 1 and 2. Does anyone dissent? If so, please type speak in the chat bar now. No, nothing coming forward. Okay, so thank you for that, and that's agreed. So we'll move on to the next agenda item. Well, and thank you all the presenters for that, for doing that report. Okay, so item 6 is Road Safety Partnership Annual Report. This item sets out the annual report for the Lincolnshire Road Safety Partnership and provides an update on fatal and killed and serious injury, known as KSI, casualty figures for Lincolnshire, plus data on trends, comparisons and areas of priority. This report will be presented by Stephen Batchelor for Lincolnshire Road Safety Partnership. So over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, councillors. As with previous updates, we try to provide quite a bit of information for your consideration, but I don't propose to go through every item on there and every bit line by line, but I'm happy to take questions for any parts of the document or any of the issues that it raised. I'll start on page 59 at 3.5. This shows, very similar to previous year, that the majority of KSI casualties in Lincolnshire are occurring on the rural road network, as you might well expect. Casualties continue to be predominantly male. They are still consistently distributed across the county, but the highest percentage is in East Lindsey. Our highest risk groups remain very similar to last year: two-wheel motor vehicle riders, young drivers and mature road users. However, pedestrians are rising. We are conscious with what's been occurring in the UK this year that vulnerable road users such as pedestrians and pedal cyclists and horse riders are facing new issues in so much as that, you know, they are out and about more than they may have previously been because of coronavirus, and there is less traffic, and there is anecdotal evidence that that traffic at times does then drive faster. So it's a new issue for Lincolnshire, that mix. We've always had that mix, but it's in the percentages that we see a slight difference this year. On 3.7, the casualty figures show that in 2019, the overall number of people killed and seriously injured was slightly up on 2018, and slightly down on 2017. So as we have discussed, I think for about the last 3 years, the change in recording mechanism where we went from paper records to electronic records on Stats 19 forms has led to an increase in the number of collisions that are recorded in the serious category. And we've seen a correlating reduction in the overall number of collisions and the number of slides. However, what we are seeing unequivocally is that casualties aren't reducing in the way that we clearly would like, and what we are aiming for and what we are targeting. So some of the actions that we're taking at this point in time, the Road Safety Partnership Board has commissioned a mid-strategy review of our 2015 to 2025 document. As part of that, we'll be engaging with leadership throughout all of the partner organisations and all of those that have an input into road safety. We're also looking at what is being done elsewhere in the UK. That's an ongoing process and something I engage in quite frequently, but I have held recent discussions with other authorities to see whether or not there's any best practice that might help us move forward as well. We've always had a enforcement strategy at the Road Safety Partnership, particularly around speed camera use, which highlights where we're going to be putting our enforcement cameras, making sure they're highly visible, highly conspicuous. And I know every year when I'm here, there is a challenge to that. And the question that is asked by councillors is, should we have more variation? You know, should there be more flexibility? Should we be able to go to sites of concern and maybe vary the way in which people expect enforcement to be done, so they're not quite sure where it's going? So we've been liaising nationally with other organisations again to consider how they undertake their enforcement strategies, and considering whether or not there's a way in which we can change our approach slightly and have an even more tiered approach than we currently do that brings in other elements. So I will provide update on that once we've had the opportunity to consider it fully. On page 61 at 3.10, I put in there the figures as of the 13th of November in terms of fatality. So that's the number of people that died in each of those years up to that date. But I'll bring it up to date for you whilst we're on the call here. So as of today, there's been 46 people killed in Lincolnshire this year in 2020. That compares for the same time period to 47 in 2019, 51 in 2018, 48 in 2017 and 59 in 2016. So whilst you can see we are slightly down this year than where we have been on previous years, it is still far too high. We had a number of quieter months where thankfully there were less people killed on the roads, but there were 2 months throughout the year where we had a very busy period for our collision investigation teams. What we can see from table 3, the KSIs and slides for 2020 in comparison to 2019, is a reduction in the overall number of collisions and also the number of people killed and seriously injured in total. Now, clearly that is highly likely to be the coronavirus and the lockdowns that have had an impact. So less traffic on the roads and therefore less opportunity for conflict. What I would say is it's been it's hard to explain, but a strange combination really, where in the first part of lockdown, not only were there many fewer journeys, less vehicles, but there were increases in speeds. But because there were so few vehicles in comparison to usual, there was less opportunity for conflict. So the risk was there, but it wasn't always causing, particularly at junctions, the number of collisions we would have seen previously. And then what's been hard to measure is from that point through the various forms of lockdowns, as traffic has increased, but is still lower than we would normally expect, you're finding that actually there's more vehicles then have the opportunity to come into conflict again, particularly around the junctions. And so, that's a risk that we need to be aware of. I'll take a pause there for any questions before I move on to the next part.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Councillor Raywood, I believe, wishes to speak.
Yes, morning, Steve. As you know, I'm interested in speeding, particularly on an area which I emailed you last week. But what concerns me is that despite the fact that you've got 80 mobile cameras out there, people are still speeding. What can we do to reduce those speed limits? And also, what is the cost? What's the criteria for having installed average speed cameras on a road? What's the cost per mile or per camera?
So in terms of the first part there, in terms of reducing speed limits, I don't know if you're talking about reducing speeders or the limits themselves, Councillor.
The average, introducing the average speed cameras, what is the cost? Is it per camera or per stretch of road?
So I'm not able to give you a figure measured by that, but what I can do is give you our experience with purchasing these systems previously. So the first system that we brought was on the A52 at Ropsley, and that system costs approximately £350,000. More recently, the average speed camera systems that we've been bought in have cost approximately £70,000. Now, that will depend on how much technology is involved. So is it one entry camera, one exit camera, or are there a number of cameras required because of junctions, etc.? But the costs have come down significantly. We've always maintained that average speed cameras are some of the most effective in terms of regulating the flow of traffic, decreasing the average speed of vehicles, and therefore decreasing the risk. And as such, we have been analysing our static fixed cameras, the old Gatso and Travello style. Some we've upgraded to digital versions of that, but we've also been changing where appropriate to average speed camera systems from some of the others. But in terms of the criteria, as you know, there's the Department for Transport Circular 01/2007, which outlines the guidance for introducing cameras. I'd be happy to share that with you, so you can read through that. But in essence, it's about having a number of collisions, speed-related collisions, at a location before enforcement cameras are considered. What we've tried to do is ensure that we are able to address the challenge that people face in their communities through a number of different ways. Now, that might be through interactive signs. You're all aware of the Community Speed Watch scheme, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the future. One of the areas I feel like we could be lacking, and this is what I alluded to before, was the difference between where there's community concern, but our analysis maybe shows that there isn't a history of collisions, or maybe the speeding isn't as high as people feel. That doesn't tackle their concern. It doesn't make them feel any safer. And so before we get from that point to installing speed cameras or doing police enforcement, what else can we do there to try and support these communities and try and bring down the speeds of vehicles? So when I talked earlier about the tiered approach, that's one of the things that we're looking into. What more can we do to assist these communities?
Yeah, the problem is quite a majority of accidents are non-reportable because they don't involve injury. And I think until you've actually been involved in an accident yourself, or somebody who's been involved in an accident, or you've lost a loved one in an accident, you don't realise that speeding does kill.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the other thing is it's all well and good me sat behind a desk looking at numbers. I fully understand that. And when we do go out and meet people in the communities and stand by the side of the road, we certainly get a sense as well of those concerns and what they are facing. And as you say, I mean, one of the challenges that often comes back is people will say, well, speed doesn't kill. ultimately, if you take it back to zero and nobody's moving, there's no conflict, nobody dies in a road collision. So, what I would say to that is, quite clearly, if you are going faster, then you have less time to react, and that the consequences, if you are involved in a collision, are likely to be more severe because of the speeds involved and therefore the forces involved. So especially in areas where, again, the 30-mile-an-hour speed limits, where there's local communities, the slower that you are going in so much as allowing yourself to react if something occurs, and being able to see and modify your driving behaviour when it's required, then clearly that's going to have an impact on safety. And as further into the documents under the fatal collision section, it clearly shows the vast majority of collisions will involve some form of driver error. So again, the reductions in speeds are always going to allow you more time to recover if one of those errors occur as well. So it's not a simple fact of speed kills. It's a nice phrase, and it's one that we've supported because we're trying to get a message across in a simple fashion to people. But realistically, the maths and the science behind it backs it up, and speed is clearly going to be a factor in collisions.
I also, Chairman, if you don't mind me asking, that people like myself over 60, males over 60, are more likely to be involved in accidents.
Well, interestingly, Councillor, you're actually not more likely to be involved in a collision, but you are more likely to die if you are. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing for us, is that the vast majority of, if I may, mature drivers, are not undertaking the types of risky behaviour in their vehicles that you would see in some of the other road users. So, people on high-powered motorcycles, young, new, inexperienced drivers, those sorts of behaviours that you might see in those drivers and riders aren't occurring in mature drivers, and invariably they are trying to drive in a safe fashion. But there's been some very interesting research being done on the body's ability to react as you drive, as you do mature in years, your ability to see hazards and risks in the same way, the ability to react to them when they do occur, but also, of course, the physiology of the body. And so if you are involved in a collision, the impact that will have on the survivability. So, of course, that is always going to be one of the things we need to focus on. And in a county like ours, where we really need to ensure that people have their independence and their freedom, and where you couldn't realistically have a public transport network which covers every inch of the network every minute of the day, people need to be able to travel safely in order to live and survive. And so we need to find ways to ensure people can continue to do that safely.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we have Councillor Ron Oxby followed by Councillor Linda Wootton. So Councillor Ron Oxby, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Listening to Stephen's report, I heard him say that East Lindsey had a higher rate of accidents. I presume this is because obviously we've got our coastal industry, Skegness, Mablethorpe, etc., etc. Do we have any figures that show who has actually got killed, i.e. are they Lincolnshire people, or are they people from Yorkshire, Nottinghamshire, etc., that would actually skew the figures for Lincolnshire, fatalities?
Thank you, Councillor. I don't have the figures with me, but we have looked at postcode data from where people live, both for fatalities and for serious injuries. So if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, I will make that information available to councillors following this. You're right, of course, there is a combination of reasons, but people are invariably travelling through other areas of the county to get to the coast. That mix for us of people who don't know the roads as well as local drivers, with people in caravans, which of course are going to be slower moving and therefore might lead to frustration in other drivers who make poor decisions in terms of trying to get ahead where it might not be safe to do so, or where they don't realise it's not safe to do so, again, because they don't know the area. Motorcycles, of course, as well. We're a very attractive county for motorcycle riders to come and visit and enjoy the roads that we have. So there is certainly a blend. I know some really good work's being done in the local community by the neighbourhood policing teams and by road policing officers. We're looking at launching a few things coming up in the next couple of months, working in conjunction with them. Of course, some of the roads we'll continue to monitor and look at where we can make improvements if we feel like there are junctions, for example, which have caused added to the risk or the hazards in the past. And I will also make sure I get that information to you with regards to whether people were from in or outside of the county.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Linda Wotton, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your report, as always, Stephen. My ears just pricked up because I was pleased that you said about a tiered approach, and obviously you realise that sometimes residents are really unhappy. Like, for instance, you very kindly had a Karcher strip arranged for me for my division. And the problem was, Stephen, and still is, people come off the high dyke and obviously they slow down, they turn down to come into Harrowby Lane, which is the top end of my division, coming off the high dyke. And you don't really realise that there are residents there, because basically it's sort of a farming community up there, and their houses are set a little bit back from the road. So the residents say to me that the drivers just put their foot down and speed down there. Now, I'm up there quite a lot, and it is true, the traffic is quite fast coming down that lane. So I'm really interested in what you said, that you can sort of look at the tiered approach and think what you can actually do for that community. They weren't very happy with the results from the Archer Strip information, but only from the fact that it was measured for Newgate Lane, but that was the only place that you could fit the Archer Strip. So I'm interested in any work that you do in that area, Stephen. Thank you.
So the last point you raised there, Councillor, is an interesting one, because what we always try to do when we put the surveys out is to ensure that we put them in the places where residents feel the speeds are likely to be highest. And the reason we do that is because we really want to get an accurate assessment of as bad as it can be, for want of a better phrase. And what we don't want to do is artificially limit how many people are exceeding the limit in our surveys, because we really want that that useful information. As you've highlighted there, on occasion there can be limitations on site that prevent us from doing that, but we'll always try and do it where the concern has been raised. Yeah, I think that's the key issue for me, Councillor, at this point in time, is that I recognise that we do have a tiered approach at this point in time. So we'll have interactive signs or passive signs, we have community speed watch, we have neighbour policing, we have the roads policing teams, and we have mobile, fixed and average speed camera systems. But as I've highlighted, I think the area for me is around particularly where we do a survey and it shows that yes, there is a speeding problem here, people are exceeding the limit and therefore there's a risk, and it hasn't led to injury collisions, and it was pointed out earlier on in this meeting that that doesn't necessarily mean collisions aren't occurring. Some of them are going to be damage only, but that can of course point to a pattern. But it's what do we do there? How do we help those people before it comes a collision? I've been doing this for almost 20 years now, and the biggest challenge for me has always been that people have put to me is that you have to wait for somebody to die before you're going to do something. Now, of course, this is one of the largest geographically counties in the UK. It's going to be very hard, no matter what resource you have, to go out and help people in every community that wants it. So we do have to take a risk-based approach, and we do have to ensure that our resources are targeted where they're needed most. However, I am aware and concerned about a gap in that tiered structure, and that's what I'm actively going to be looking at. Now, I don't want to put out suggestions of what I think might be the right way or what we might look to introduce in case they don't come off. But what I would say is that by the time I'm here next year, I think you'll all, I will have an answer for you as to what we can do to try and help those communities in that part of the tiered approach that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, that sounds good, Stephen, because I guess we all, and I certainly do, get requests from various parish councils about speeding and whatever. So anything you can do there to help would be appreciated. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Stephen, in your report, you identified rural, urban, young drivers, motorcyclists, old drivers. Same question as last year. Why isn't the report on street light, if there was street lights on at the time of an accident?
I don't have an answer for you, Councillor. I'm sorry. Did I say last year that I would include it?
Councillor Clark, you've gone on to moot.
Sorry, Chairman. Yeah, last year, Stephen, I did ask the same question, and I'll probably ask it next year. I think one of the factors when there's an accident surely is a good lighting on.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Sorry. What I will do, I will get if I can, put it down into a one-page document that provides information on whether or not there were street lights present or on, if that is feasible to do so. I know within the Stats 19 documents there is information in there. It's not always going to be filled in because it will depend on the nature of the collision, the time of the day, whether streetlights would have been a factor, for example. If I said I would have done that last year, then my sincere apologies, but within the week I will make sure you have that information if we have it within the Road Safety Partnership.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stokes, have we any other speakers at this point in time?
Yeah, we have a hand raised, Councillor Bill Aaron.
So, Councillor Aaron, if you'd like to come in now, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's on the stats for cyclists and pedestrians. There appears no figures either. Would that not be helpful for us to know the figures?
Which table or part of the document?
Page 59, 3.5, 3.6.
Thank you, Councillor. My hope is that as an overview in the first few pages, that data is extrapolated from the supporting data document, but I will review that as we go through, and if the actual figures for that isn't there, then I will make sure that you have them today, but my belief is that they're in the supporting data document.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we'll get to that. So if you wish to continue with your report then, Steve, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on page 63 at 4.8, it specifies the priorities as agreed by the Road Safety Partnership Board for this year. Young drivers 17 to 24, mature drivers above the age of 60, two-wheeled motor vehicles, and as I mentioned before, pedal cyclists and pedestrians is an emerging issue, but also business use is something that we need to be conscious and aware of. I'll move on to some of the actions that we're taking now. I've listed everything that we do that is relevant, but I don't want to go over every single part unless you have any questions of them. But on page 65, I've referred to the Safer Roads Fund scheme, and it's just to say that I'll give a proper update next year once the vast majority of that work should be completed, but we're making good progress now, both in Lincolnshire and with our partners in North Lincolnshire and North East Lincolnshire, on targeting some of the roads that were highlighted as having persistently high number of collisions on them. Under 6.4, we've done a lot of work in the last 12 months trying to ensure that in terms of the information that we provide and the liaison we have with local police enforcement and the roads policing teams, that representation from the Road Safety Partnership is present at many more groups within the force to ensure that we're able to support them and provide extra information, and so that their work is highly targeted. We've also agreed and have advertised for a new position within the Lincolnshire Police in their data analyst department, which will spend a significant amount of time on road safety. And again, that just brings a slightly different view to it from all of the police systems and ensuring that we're maximising all of the data that's available to us from our parent organisations. On page 66, we continue to do a lot of work on mature driver training and education. We're still able to provide free of charge theory training sessions in the classroom, and also to offer the opportunity after budget from the Police and Crime Commissioner's office to provide in-car assessments and training from instructors as well. So we'll continue to focus on that. Also within Lincolnshire Police and members of the Road Safety Partnership, on looking to tackle the issues that mature drivers face. So that work is ongoing. I'm pleased to introduce the National Bike Safe Scheme within Lincolnshire, breaking that out of the Road Safety Partnership. And so we had 2 courses in October this year, which is one of the very few elements of actual face-to-face training we've been able to do since the end of March. I've mentioned about the analysis, so I'll move on to 7.6 on page 68. Just to reiterate that up to March, we were still able to have interaction with over 13,000 students within Lincolnshire. Clearly, that's been impacted this year. So I'll just talk a bit about what coronavirus has meant for us within the Road Safety Partnership and in terms of the work that we've been able to do. I think the biggest change was the cessation of National Driver Offender Retraining Seguin courses, so speed awareness courses and courses like that. They ceased on the 20th of March 2020, and that meant for us, for example, that there were thousands upon thousands of people who had been detected speeding, offered a course because if they were eligible to do one, but would not have been able to complete that course. So a lot of work was done nationally and locally to introduce digital online courses. We've now delivered to over 12,000 clients since the start of the coronavirus issues that the country has faced. Feedback has been really very positive. So I think for some people to have very quickly have the ability to get online from the comfort of their own home in a small group, so usually about 8 people and the instructor, and to have the best part of 3 hours of interaction around the issues has proved really successful. My hope is that going forwards, we're going to be able to deliver a blended approach. So those that require or want to be in a classroom session are able to do so, but those who would prefer or benefit from online training will be able to get that as well. So it's certainly something that we're pushing for with the UK Road organisation that oversees National Driver Offender Retraining courses. So the school crossing patrol facilities did have to cease for a while, but they have been back operating since this September term. The community speed watch volunteers were again they did have to stop, but have been back operating up until the end of October, where they stopped again, and now they're able to go out again if they wish to, of course, ensuring social distancing and complying with all of the rules of the UK at the time. We've also had to deliver, modify and change our educational delivery. So we've been working on what goes into schools, working on an online version of the Too Fast, Too Soon production. But a lot of our business has carried on as usual. So we've had elements of the accident investigation and prevention work done by Lincolnshire County Council. The police speed enforcement team that work here and the collision investigation team have still been working as well. So we've had a mix of some services having to stop and some services continuing. I think I might have just jumped across Community Speed Watch. I did just want to say that we did have our 50th volunteer group start up a few weeks back. So we've got over 250 parishes that are now involved in Community Speed Watch in some way, shape or form, be that just the passive signs or the interactive signs. But now we have 50 active groups who are actually delivering speed monitoring on the side of the road. And that, at this point in time is 659 people within those 50 groups that have been trained to deliver. So that's really positive in terms of allowing the community to engage with making things better in their communities. So again, I'll pause there for any questions if there are any.
Okay, I can't see any coming through, but just while there is, I noticed, Steve, whilst driving around the county, many of those passive signs have faded and almost can't see them at all, just gone white. Presumably that's up to the individual parish councils to request more signs, is it?
Yep, so we are able to purchase those signs on behalf of any parishes, so they can place an order with us and we will provide them. what I have been doing is, where recent surveys have shown that there is a problem within their communities still, and they're still seeing lots of speeding motorists. We have been looking at ways in which we can introduce more of those passive signs so that there's an even better warning for motorists as they're driving through as to the speed limits. So we have been looking at that slightly more proactively. But yes, you're right, they are available for any parish to purchase more should they wish to do so. And for me, that is a key part of it, because two reasons. One, we don't want a scheme that looks as if it's unloved, like it's not being maintained and looked after, because what message does that give to the motorists? But secondly, in terms of their impact, clearly if they are fading, then they're not as visible to motorists. So we want them to look as good as we can and be as prominent as possible.
Sure. Okay, I think I'm right in saying, Councillor Stokes, that Councillor Ray Wotton wishes to speak.
Yep, yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, so Councillor Ray Wotton, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Stephen, how do you go about trying to get volunteers to join the community speed watch in unparished areas like Grantham and Spalding?
So I think the first issue for us that we've faced in unparished areas has been around public liability, and having somebody be prepared to ensure that people are going to be safe when they're out on the roadside. Assuming that whether that's in Grantham or Lincoln or Boston, for example, the town councils or whoever is appropriate in there are prepared to do that or have that facility available, then generally speaking, we are always able to get local community members involved. It's just getting over that first hurdle. And I know, Councillor, you've highlighted to me that you've got some areas within and on the outskirts of Grantham that we're going to try and look at getting that up and running in the near future.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Chairman. You're muted, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wotton. The 80 mobile camera site, Steve, yeah? Can you just remind me how many vans there are? I know that seems a lot more than what there actually is.
Yeah, so we only have 6 vans, and so
seems a lot more than that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we could certainly, in terms of the concerns that are raised by residents, we could probably do with 106 vans. I think if we were to try and make the impact that we want all over the county. But again, as I mentioned before, in terms of the tiered approach and what else we can do, that's another thing that we can consider. Of course, it needs paying for, but if we can increase the number of operators and the number of vans, and we can have more of a presence in these local communities as well. But it's also about different technologies. So for those who aren't aware, for our mobile camera sites, we have to go out and we make sure there's a safe and appropriate site to park, as you would imagine, for the vans. That needs setting up in our EOS processing software system, so that it can generate all the information required for a notice of intended prosecution when it goes out to a member of the public. So that does do away with quite a bit of the flexibility that I've mentioned before. Whereas, you could have a handheld radar or laser that could be used by an officer or staff member with the appropriate powers on a motorcycle. Not as they're riding along, clearly, but they could go out to a place that doesn't require a parking location for a van and do that. So it's looking about what else can we do to try and have more tools in the box for dealing with these problems.
Okay, thank you. I may have missed that when you was talking, Steve, about the online courses. But when we get back to normality, whatever normality is, and you may have already mentioned it, but did we say that some of those will be actual face-to-face courses and some would be online?
Yeah, so the position from UK Road, who runs these nationally, has always been that the online courses were an alternative to classrooms whilst we couldn't deliver face-to-face, but it was only as an alternative, and that the expectation was that we would get back to classroom sessions full-time in the future.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, my personal view is that we should continue with a blended approach going forward, that there are people that will benefit from having classroom sessions and there are people that will benefit from having online sessions, and that if it means we get as many people as possible a part of the educational process and considering the impact speed has on their driving, then I think we should do all we can to get as many involved as possible. So I'll obviously keep you updated as to how the decision-making process goes, but certainly feedback from us as a course deliverer and from clients taking it is that the online courses have been very popular.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stokes, have we got anyone else wishing to speak?
No, I can't see any other people wishing to speak.
I think Councillor Aaron has got his hand up. That might be the legacy hand. Councillor Aaron, did you wish to speak? Okay, we'll take that as a no. So, Steve, that's more or less got to the end of your report, isn't it, apart from the tables there. So have you got any other comments, Steve?
And I'm just happy to, if there's any specific questions on any of the data, happy to discuss any elements of that. I guess the main thing that we would highlight was on page 75 and table 3. As I mentioned before, I got a slight increase in the overall number of people killed and seriously injured from 2018 to 2019 of 4%. But of course, that does show primarily across pretty much every area, that's that slight reduction. Pedal cyclists, there wasn't a reduction this year, but the big one for me there is the child casualties. Now, luckily, child fatalities weren't increased, but quite clearly one of our most important duties is to protect the young and young people and children within this county. So my concern has been that with coronavirus, and not being able to get into schools as much as we had done previously, is ensuring that we are able to provide some level of education and engagement and making sure that we get back into the schools as soon as we possibly can as well.
Okay, thank you. Page 77, Stephen, towards the top there, or the bottom of the paragraph. I don't know if that's a typo, whether I'm not understanding it properly. It's got in 2019, 1 to 2 p.m. and 7 to 6 p.m. Can you see what I mean?
Yeah, I can, and I can only assume that is an error in my typing. I think the broader point in that section was most certainly that every year I've tried to give a comparison of the times of fatalities compared to previous years, and it became absolutely clear to me the further back I went that there wasn't a pattern, that it is distributed every year slightly differently, and that therefore fatalities can occur at any point in any time. But yes, you're right, that must be a typo, and I would imagine 7 to 8 is what should have been in there on the second part.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, no other comments from members? Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Stokes, is there anyone wishing to speak? All gone quiet, so I'm going to take it we got to the end of your report then, Steve, so thank you very much for that. The actions were that we was invited to consider and comment on the report and highlight any recommendations and further actions required. Also to seek assurance on the work being undertaken by the Road Safety Partnership to reduce the number of people killed and injured on county roads. I'll personally propose that the committee receives the report and has been reassured by the work being undertaken by the Road Safety Partnership to reduce the number of people killed and injured on county roads. Does anyone dissent to that? I think it will take it that way. If anyone dissents, please say so now. No, nothing coming through. So thank you. That's agreed. So thank you once again, Steve, for that. It's a very interesting report. Thank you. So we'll move on then to item 7, which is a Fire and Rescue Statement of Assurance 2019. This item sets out the Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue Statement of Assurance for 2019-20 on financial, governance and operational matters. This report will be presented by Mark Baxter, Chief Fire Officer. So over to you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. So yeah, as Chair just stated, this is our annual requirement under the Fire and Rescue's national framework to set out a statement of assurance. So I'll just talk you through the statement and I'll pause at various times to offer questions in regards to the areas that are covered. So the first element is just in regards to a general background in regards to the statement of assurance. As the national framework document outlines that the priorities within the framework is the bullet points, which is ensuring that we've got provision for prevention and protection activity to respond to fire and rescue related incidents, to identify and assess the full range of foreseeable fire and rescue related risks, to collaborate with emergency services and local and national partners to increase efficiency and effectiveness of the service they provide, be accountable to communities for the service we provide, and to develop and maintain a workforce that is professional, resilient, skilled, flexible and diverse. So next section is just giving a broader view of the county, which I'm sure you're all well aware of. The area which, again, we are quite mindful of because it specifically links in within our prevention activities, is that not only is the population increasing, but is also ageing, with the proportion of people over 65 to be projected to increase from 23% in 2018 to 30% in 2043. And with the portion of people over 75 is predicted to increase by 83% over that same period. So that will just have a more longer term impact in regards to our activities, and particularly within our integrated risk management planning. So in the next section, in regards to the fire and rescue as we are as a service, particularly in regards to our operational side, it hasn't changed from the previous year. So we're still operating 38 fire stations in the same manner that we have done. We're still operating with 48 station-based fire engines, 2 area level appliances, 5 specialist appliances, 10 swift rescue boats and national resilience capabilities. In the 1920 year, we received just over 22,000 calls, attended just over 10,000 operational incidents, and there was 3,818 of those were medical response calls. So that's really just a broad overview of 1920 in that context. So the first area was in regards to financial, and so as I'm sure you appreciate, our financial governance reporting and scrutiny is within the LCC financial assurance processes. Our statement of accounts is linked in with the LCC statement of accounts that is published, which ensures that electors, taxpayers, service users, elected members, employees have clear information about the full council statements. The one point to probably note is the 1920 auditing of the financial statements has been pushed back because of the COVID events. So at the time of this being published, we haven't got them at hand, but the annual audit letter will be produced imminently. Excuse me. But particularly in regards to fire and rescue, in regards to our value for money for links into LCC. So in 1920, we ended up with an overspend of just over £30,000, and that was from a 20.7 million revenue budget. So that's well within the LCC's 1% tolerance. The 1920 capital budget, that consisted of 9.8 million and plus another 4.1 million that we brought forward from 1819. And that was in regards to projects that had been moved into that year. But through the year, we had a realignment of about 6.3 million of the capital budget that we've moved into this current year for a number of capital programmes. And that was in regards to station improvement programme and also extending the lifespan of some of our equipment and vehicles. So that gives us a more efficient way of utilising our capital programme. So in regards to having a bit of a measure of how we are a value for money fire and rescue authority, there's several ways how we can measure that, but how we've consistently measured this is using the SIP for data and how we compare ourselves to other fire and rescue authorities. So there's 3 real key measures. In regards to the pound per head of population, the English average fire and rescue authority is £40.4 and Lincolnshire is just over £36. Pounds per hectare, the average for English FRAs is £142, whereas Lincolnshire comes in at £46 just over. And then the average per operational fire station is across the English fire and rescue authorities is just over 1.4 million, whereas our stations are 732,000 just over. And I think that's really in regards to the way that we build our operational activities, and it is predominantly based on our on-call stations and our on-call personnel, which just makes it a very effective and efficient model. So, opportunity to pause if there's anything in regards to the financial areas for fire and rescue. If there's anybody wanted to ask any questions in regards to that.
Can't see anything coming through, but just where we are so far, Mark, we just mentioned about those comparisons per head of population, per hectare, per operational fire station. Is there not other ways it could have been looked at too, like per incident or say per firefighter? Has that been thought about?
It is, yeah. It's very difficult to manage that, doing a like-for-like comparison, because different fire and rescue authorities have different crewing levels and they have different minimum crewing personnels. We can do some deep dive work into that, but they will come up with some caveat and tolerances in regards to that. So, for example, per average fire appliance, there's a lot of services that will still only operate with a crew of 5. And often have a crew of 6, where we have an operator of a crewing of 4. And there's also fire engines that have minimum crewing of 3 for specialist incidents that go through. And then also it also indicates in regards to the longevity of incidents, which can be very, very volatile. So, for example, for Lincolnshire, whereas, and forgive me for not giving you the most accurate, but I'm going from my financial memory, from 2017-18, we was averaging our cost per incident was round about £178. Then the following year, that went up to something around about £240. Now, the reason why there's be a volatility in regards to that will depending on the floodings that we have between Wainfleet, which had a significant impact in regards to the amount of times that people spend at incidents. It also indicates the type of incidents where we have more makeups, i.e. we have more appliances having to go to the type of incidents. So it's very volatile, and it will change wildly year on year. But we can do some more work on that.
Okay. Well, like you say in the report, that the measures can be misleading. It's like comparing apples with pears, I suppose, a lot of the time, isn't it?
And it does, and it really kind of links in with the work that we're doing with HMI and on a national level. As I think there's a collective understanding nationally that there needs to be a common benchmark how all fire and rescue authorities can be judged on their efficiency element of it. And at the moment, because there's so many different governance models and funding models, that's very difficult for it to do so. So we've consistently used those measures just to give us a flavour of how we're comparing year on year.
Okay, Mark, thank you for that. You touched upon flooding, and on page 96, it mentions the statutory duties of fire and rescue services to extinguish fires, protecting life and property, rescuing people from road traffic collisions, promoting fire safety and responding to other emergencies. It doesn't specifically mention flooding in there. Is that because it's not a statutory duty, or does that just come under the heading of responding to other duties?
Yeah, so that's almost as much debate that's still happening on a national level and a legislative level. Currently, within the Fire Services Act and the national framework, specifically flooding isn't a statutory responsibility for fire and rescue. However, what we recognise is that that's an area that we step into because we have got the skills, we have got the equipment, and we've got the personnel that's able to respond to it, particularly in Lincolnshire. That is still a national discussion that's going through. I do anticipate that it will become a statutory responsibility, but with that would, I would expect, would attribute appropriate funding to go with it as well. So that's what's a debate that's happening at this moment in time. Now, we respond under the Civil Contingencies Act 2004. So where we have the confidence that it's absolutely right for us to provide that response, because under the Civil Contingencies, where we have an event that no single agency is able to respond effectively on their own, we come together to support each other, and it's absolutely right that fire and rescue are one of the leading responding agencies within that. So as you're right, Chair, it isn't a statutory responsibility, but I think that it's only right that for Lincolnshire that we do provide that operational response, along with many other partners on that.
Okay, thank you for that. Can't see anyone else wishing to comment. So if you carry on with the rest of the report then, Mark, please.
Okay, thank you. So in regards to the governance arrangements, again, I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I think you're all quite conversant in regards to where we fit in with governance. Clearly, the public protection scrutiny plays a significant part in regards to ensuring the appropriate level of scrutiny and governance is put upon us. And I will always say this, we are extremely well supported through our portfolio holder, Nick, and support from Councillor Corey as well. And I think that's having a positive relationship that ensures that we have the informal scrutiny throughout the year as well. The one point I would note that the opinion of the head of the internal audit in response to 1920 was that the arrangements of governance, risk management, financial control and internal control were performing adequately. So we've got that independent assurance in regards to our governance arrangements. So I'll move on to the some operational elements. So in regards to planning, as I touched on earlier, there are some really key documents that outline our statutory and policy frameworks. So that really links into our important document with our Irmp Baseline document, which obviously we brought to the previous scrutiny committee last month, which was kindly signed off by executive. So that really outlines what is going to be our priorities and what we're going to do to mitigate the risks that's identified within the IRMP. Whilst the IRMP sets out the strategy for the service, the next key document is in regards to our service plan, which sets out our priorities, and the details of the service plan 2019-20 is split into two parts, and the part two then goes into real details in regards to how we plan for our operational response to mitigate the risks of the IRMP. So then, well, I'll just move on to collaborative work and interoperability. Again, we have a statutory responsibility to collaborate as a fire and rescue service. I'll break this down into prevention and protection. So clearly within our prevention strategies, we've got a comprehensive community risk profile. And this is around ensuring that we meet health, home safety, health and wellbeing, road safety, arson reduction, youth engagement to target our at most risk and vulnerable people within the communities. We internally within Fire and Rescue, we have a blended approach by using a dedicated community safety advocates and also our operational crews that can provide that timely and person-centred support. But we also have some really key partners that are ensuring that we can reach out to our communities, particularly with their wellbeing links, road safety partnership, arson task force, with that common aim to work our most vulnerable persons within the communities. Within our protection strategy, and that is where we are supporting people within our built environment. We have close working relationships with local district housing, environmental health, trading standards, police, licensing officers and care quality commissions, along with the health and safety executive. And we ensure that we are informing of our partner agencies and resulting in the better business to ensure that everybody within the built environment is able to operate safely. And we're also able to provide support if there is going to be any enforcements, if anybody does be identified that they are not operating safely. And then within our response strategy, we do deliver our response with some key partners. We still have that well-embedded co-responding scheme with EMAS and Lives. We have the British Red Cross emergency response. We have the bariatric response, joint ambulance conveyance, and we have the flood rescue response that was developed in 2019-20 with a lead local flood authority. And then the final element, which I'll touch on in regards to just on the operational response, is our lead role within the local resilience forum. We provide, and my role is as the deputy chair of the local resilience forum and the SCG. And also we do provide through emergency planning the secretariat support, which, as I'm sure you can appreciate, there's already probably been seeing its full flow through this current year 2021. So I'll just pause at that moment to offer any questions in regards to the collaborative interoperability and our planning section of our statement of assurance.
Okay, anyone wishing to speak?
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Just give me a bit of a pause for breath, to be honest with you, as much as anything else, so thank you for that. We also do have mutual aid protocols for our operational response, particularly within all our bordering fire and rescue authorities that we have continually work to ensure that we've got that mutual aid agreements. We also have a national mutual aid protocol that links into our national resilience, and that's there for us to ensure that if we do have a significant event that we are unable to support with our own resources, then we can lean on the National Fire and Rescue Services to come and support us, and also we can provide support to any other event that happens across the country. We do continue to be part of the Joint Emergency Services Interoperability Programme, and that's the nationally recognised tri-service programme, which is called JESIT, and that's a commitment to ensure that all emergency services can work efficiently and effectively at all operational incidents. And then we also have, we still continue to work along within the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership, which was under the Crime and Disorder Act. And that's linking in with our antisocial behaviour, domestic abuse, reducing offending and serious organised crime. And we are still heavily linked in regards to that partnership. Probably one of the most significant operational partnerships that we went live in from March was our East Coast Consortium, which was in our partnership with Norfolk, Humberside and Hertfordshire to develop an integrated and resilience command and control mobilising system. So that's really been coming live as of this year, and that is a blue light collaboration partnership that I think is going to give us that much needed resilience, and it's quite a forward thinking partnership arrangement for all four services to be able to support each other at, during any event. And then we do continue with our blue light programme, linking in with the police and EMAS in particular about shared facilities, shared resources, and how we've recently moved our control into the Netherlands Force Control, and we've relocated our Silver Command capability into Police Force Control as well. So any questions in regards to that section?
No, okay. So carry on, Mark.
Thank you. So just a quick summary in regards to the performance from 2019. Again, we did see an 8% decrease in the overall for primary fires, which was a positive, but we did have a 3% increase in accidental fires. Reducing of the road traffic collisions and consequences. Again, this was obviously we've had an absolutely very detailed and comprehensive report previously. For Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue, I will just caveat on our figures will be slightly different because we measure our performance from April through to March, where the Road Safety Partnership do report from January through to December. Although we've had some conversations, and particularly with Steve, the figures do marry up, although they do seem slightly different. It's because we do measure from a different time period. But the same, we are representing a 2% increase on our previous year's figures. And then in regards to the improving the health and well-being, we did attend 3,818 corresponding incidents, which is a 12% decrease on the previous years. That is an area for us that we are working on this year in particular to try and increase our corresponding activities, because what we do recognise is that is predominantly decreased because of availability of our crews within corresponding. So there's a priority focus on how we are moving that and turning that around to get the direction of travel moving back up again. But of the incidents that we attended, we did provide assistance on 92% of occasions, which is shows a really positive impact of that work. And on 6 separate occasions, we was able to determine a return of spontaneous circulation. I think that's just an important thing to notice. What we are saying that on at least 6 occasions we have brought somebody back whose heart has completely stopped. So there is absolutely no doubt that our interventions have saved lives. and that shows the value of our corresponding scheme. So hence the reason why we're having a really key focus to ensure that we can increase the amount of corresponding activities. So I'll move on to continuous improvement. So within 2019, we focused on 3 areas, which was to support the health and well-being of our workforce. And through that, we was working with our Wellbeing and Inclusion Board that had 6 pillars that have been sponsored and championed by the strategic team. And that includes culture, equality and diversity, inclusion, family and social, mental health, fitness, health and nutrition, and occupational health and rehabilitation. There's been significant work that's been devolved down through the workforce to ensure that we have a focus on our own health and well-being of our own staff. We've been focusing on the development of our information management and technology capability. Again, the East Coast Consortium and that partnership arrangement with the upgrade of Vision 4 across the for our control teams was one of our successes in regards to information management teams. And we're also, we are still, however, at the time of the report, we are still in the process of being upgraded into 365 and having the use of Teams. So that work was started in 1920. That is still carried on over to this year because we're not there within LFR, but I do have assurances that's going to be completed by the end of this calendar year. And then it's developing our prevention and protection capability. There's always been a very clear recognised focus in this area of our organisation, particularly in regard to the back of our HMI CFRS 2018 inspection, but also the outcomes of the tragic events at the Grenfell Tower inquiry. There's going to be an awful lot of recommendations and focus on regards to protection activities for all services. So we have been able to access national funding grants to increase our capability and also to upskill a lot of our staff. And that continues to work through into this year. And our prevention team have had a continual focus on resources, and we're launching the Sherman risk profile concept that is now working through so we can identify our most vulnerable people within communities through partnership arrangements so we can support them in the best way we can. And then finally, which I'll touch on, continuous improvement, is their HMIC FRS inspection from 2018. We've had a continual programme of working through our areas of improvement and our cause for concern. The cause for concern was specifically relating to how we record our training of competence, which I'm pleased to say we have achieved, and our areas of improvement are looking at sign-off this month. So 2019 was the year where we was working through that threat, all of the organisation. So I'll pause on that for any questions in regards to the areas that I've just covered there, if I may.
Okay, I can see Councillor Clark wishes to speak. So over to you, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Mark, the perception of stress has changed over the years, i.e. not accepted as a weakness. Could you tell me how the service deals with stress, and also how does it compare with other fire services in the country?
Okay, so yeah, absolutely. The stress and well-being has been a focus, particularly for Lincolnshire. How we've managed and developed, we've put together a peer support team, which are dedicated, trained personnel throughout all of the organisation that they're there that people can access 24/7, where they can. Excuse me a second, sorry. Just apologies for that. Just had my son just walking through at the back. So they're a dedicated group of people that offer support and signposting for people who have stressors for whatever number of reasons. So we have an absolute focus in regards to that. We've also entered into an agreement with an organisation called Supporting Minds, and they can offer dedicated professional counselling and support for individuals, and we've had a significant uptake in regards to that, and then we get trends and analysis from that. Really what that's saying to me is two things. We are identifying that, as you rightly say, there is more people that are getting more stress in life and in work, and I think what I'm more comfortable with, that people are feeling more comfortable to step forward and being able to get that support and be able to get that access. I think it's fair to say, probably in previous years, those stresses were there and thereabouts, but people didn't really know how to access. They probably didn't have the avenues, and they probably didn't feel comfortable and confident to be able to step forward and say, oh, I need some support, and we wasn't able to signpost them. I'm pleased to say that I think that culture has definitely changed, particularly in the last 12 to 18 months, because I can see the uptake has risen. So if I'm honest, but that only really feels like the start of the journey, because absolutely where we need to now work on is how we can almost prevent the stresses from happening in the first place. How that links in nationally, that's pretty much on the same theme of pretty much all FRAs across the country are, because it has become a real national priority of recognising how stress does affect people both home and at work, and how that can be brought into the workplace. But more importantly, what role do we play as an employer to support our staff to ensure that they are best supported?
Really, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Mark, you touched upon Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabularies and Fire and Rescue Service inspection. I can recall one of the things in that report was that on-call staff in particular felt remote from senior management. I guess COVID probably hasn't helped that. And I know you used to have COG visits once a year where senior management would attend fire stations. What's happened there? Has that been replaced by online or whatever? Where are we with that?
Absolutely. So you're absolutely right, Chair. It was a real concern for us having any part of the organisation doesn't feel that they're connected with our senior management team. So as you pointed out, we used to have the COG inspections. What we've done at the moment, and we have been communicating this with our on-call staff, we're looking at launching from January onwards more virtual touch-in times, and not necessarily inspection, but actually what we are going to launch is more regular virtual touch-in times with our stations. What we're going to do is separate the inspection regime to actually more of an engagement regime, because what I do recognise is actually when, as much as it's been great that we went out there and met with our on-call personnel, putting that alongside an inspection, we could probably separate the two, so we can actually just have dedicated time with our on-call staff, which is just pure engagement, and they don't have to have the worry or the concern about this being part of an inspection and an audit. So we'll continue with the inspection audit, but it'll be separate. So what the plan will be, that because of the technology that we've now got, we will have absolutely more interaction with them. So we will probably be seeing them at least 2 or 3 times a year on the virtual format. But then also we will still be putting in place the physical visits as and when COVID allows us to, because I think it's still important that we have them face-to-face interactions as well. I don't want everything just to be relied on the virtual world, because I think it's important that we have that blended approach, and then people do actually see us as well. And I'm also going to be ensuring that I bring that down to our area manager level, so it won't just be the chief officer group, it will be the area manager cadre. So all of our senior leadership team will be part of that engagement plan. So the on-call in particular do see more of the team more often.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
To carry on then, Mark. Yeah.
No problem at all. So I'll just then touch on regards to what are the future plans for LFR. We're absolutely continuing with that, promoting the inclusion culture to support the health and well-being of our workforce, and that is a strategic level driven through our wellbeing and inclusion board, and that is an absolute focus on mental health and well-being. We are continuing on our development of our information technology capability, linking within the LCC IT strategy. And as I touched on a little bit earlier, particularly in this year, the development of our prevention and protection capability, which is going to ensure that we can support our communities within the prevention and protection arena, kind of linked into a little bit of the performance reporting that I touched on my previous report. Particularly in prevention, we still need to have a clear focus supporting our most vulnerable people. Another area that we are looking is an evaluation to drive improvement. What we have recognised and we're focusing on this year is having a more robust evaluation framework that will be able to give us clear information and direction of the impact of all of our activities to ensure that we are actually making a positive difference to our communities. And then the final thing, and it was, although this is a statement of assurance for 2019-20, it would have been remiss of me not to at least mention that towards the end of that year, we did enter into the emergency phase of the COVID crisis. And at the time where this report was covers that at the last month of that year, then we did have that clear focus of supporting the communities through the local resilience forum in regards to COVID, just within a pure multi-agency environment. So, Chair, really that's just a summary of our statement of assurance that links into our national framework, statutory responsibilities. So then really just an opportunity if anybody has got any final questions in regards to the report.
Okay, thank you for that, Mark. Councillor Stokes as Vice Chairman, I can't see any members wishing to speak. Are you aware of any?
No, I haven't seen anyone else either, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that. Just one final one from me then, Mark. I guess there's been some positive cases of COVID within LFR. And if so, has it had an effect on the availability of crews to respond to incidents?
Okay, so that's been a evolving picture over the year, particularly in regards to the first lockdown. We had absolute minimal impact. I think we had one case in the whole of the first lockdown period. In regards to then moving forward a few months when we entered into the second lockdown period, clearly with the increase in the testing regime that's been rolled out nationally, we had more cases, and I think at the peak we probably had 6 or 7 cases. It's had an impact, but I would say it's been minimal impact. What the team have been doing, we set up a dedicated Silver Command team that operates every day, and they have managed to be able to move resources around and personnel around to cover any gaps. But it's had a minimal impact, but nothing that's caused us any concern at all. And the example being is we had a positive case at Loughton, so that did have an impact on the whole time duty crew, all of them having to be self-isolating for the 14-day period. But within our business continuity plans, we was able to put in place support through our on-call immediately, so it didn't affect the availability of the appliance. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we don't have any further comments, so thank you very much for that interesting report, Mark. Yes, the actions are, is this committee is invited to review and comment on the contents of Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue's Authority Statement of Assurance 2019-2020. The proposal is, I'll personally propose that the committee receives the report and supports the Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue Authority's Statement of Assurance for 2019-2020. So I proposed it. Does anyone dissent to that? No dissent. So thank you, Mark. That's all agreed.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to pass on my thanks to the Scrutiny Committee for its ongoing scrutiny and supporting us. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. So we'll now move on to agenda item 8, which is the Coroner's Service Annual Report. This item sets out the annual report for the Coroner's Service. The report will be presented by Paul Smith, Acting Senior Coroner, and Sarah Barry, Acting Assistant Director for Public Protection. And we'll take questions at the end of the report. So, Paul, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the invitation to speak to you today. Looking around my screen this morning, there aren't many faces that I recognise, and I suspect that equally my face is unknown to many of you. By way of very brief introduction, I'm Paul Smith. I'm currently Acting Senior Coroner for Lincolnshire, a position I've held since the 1st of September. Before then, I was Area Coroner, effectively full-time number 2 to firstly Stuart Fisher and latterly Tim Brennan. I've been in post there since December of 17. The role of the coroner is often perhaps a little misunderstood, and my report, I hope, gives some clarity if clarity were needed. My role is to investigate deaths which may be either violent, unnatural, of unknown cause, or deaths which arise in custody or other state detention. The culmination of a coroner's inquiry is, of course, the inquest. That is intended to be a fact-finding rather than a fault-finding process. The law prescribes the nature and extent of the inquest process. I have 4 questions to answer: who died, when they died, where they died, and how they died. And the overall thrust of the procedure is not to attribute fault or blame, but to identify areas where things may well not have been done as well as they should, and to provide suitable recommendations or highlight those errors so that those in power can take steps to ensure that issues are not repeated. As you will be well aware, I'm not a local authority employee. I'm wholly independent. We are bound together by the terms of Section 24 of the Coroners and Justice Act, which requires Lincolnshire County Council to provide me with suitable courtroom, suitable office accommodation, staffing, and in short, the infrastructure needed to run my service. Coroner services, I'm well aware, are a hungry mouth. We are demand-led rather than budget-driven, and on occasion that can sometimes lead to tensions between us, although I hope that my service will always display appropriate financial prudence when taking judicial decisions. We are guided at both the local authority and the coroner service by the Chief Coroner, who periodically updates an aspirational model coroner area, which sets out an overall framework for how the service should operate. Lincolnshire, as you'll be aware, as a coroner area, has been in being since August of 2017. It formed out of the amalgamation of former areas of central and southern Lincolnshire. In terms of the headline figures for reported deaths, we are 19th out of 85 areas nationally. Geographically, we are, I think, one of the largest. I've set out in brief some indications of the complexity of the coronial workload within this jurisdiction. Touching back on the presentation made by Stephen Batcher earlier today, I just highlight that as a coronial area, we have the second highest rate of road traffic collision deaths in the country. Over and above that, perhaps unusually among the other 85 areas, we are certainly one of the top 5 areas in relation to treasure fines, dealing with findings of treasure being one of the more eclectic parts of my role. I was asked to indicate some of the challenges and successes over the last year. The first of those I would like to touch on is the fact that, as the committee will be aware, Lincolnshire Coroner Service does not have, certainly in Lincoln, a dedicated courtroom. We have historically relied upon the provision of the Cathedral Centre for servicing courts. That provides 2 courtrooms, one of which is capable of seating in the order of 50 people and is suitable for larger inquests and also suitable for cases involving a jury. A second room there is slightly smaller, but still provides scope for the attendance of 30 people. In March of last year, that closed. We were given fairly short notice. Notice, in fact, tendered at the end of January for closure in March. And at a stroke, we effectively lost the court facilities that we'd relied upon. We were able to take advantage of alternative facilities downstairs here at 4 Linden Road, the ceremony room which we shared with the registration service. And in addition, we took advantage of the offer of the use of the judges' lodgings on Castle Hill. Both of those accommodations were somewhat smaller than we had previously, and there were certainly some short-term but real practical issues with each of them, not least as a consequence of the loss of a larger courtroom. A number of larger cases were delayed, and it is to my shame that I see on my board in the listening office, I still have 2 prison deaths dating back to 2017, one of which has been adjourned on a number of occasions, all of which for good reason, but notwithstanding those reasons, the cases remain of some age. In relation to coroner service performance, that is, I would suggest, some good news. From a poor starting position when I joined the service in December of 2017, when the area was one of the slowest areas nationally in terms of getting cases to inquest. Throughout 2018, we were one of only 6 jurisdictions in an almost universal picture of other areas becoming progressing more slowly to inquest. We were one of only 6 areas to maintain our time to inquest. Over the course of 2019, as a combination of 2 full-time coroners and a proactive listing system, which I introduced in 2018, we were able to reduce the timeliness to inquest of the service by some 10 weeks, reducing the time from 45 weeks down to 35 weeks. And that's against the backdrop, as I say, of loss of dedicated court accommodation throughout 2019. And had we had a full complement of courts throughout that year, I'm quite sure the improvement would have been even more marked. Our current position is, against the background of the COVID virus, there has been some slippage, as one may imagine. I'll touch on COVID in a moment, but I can report that notwithstanding the problems of the COVID pandemic, our performance figures are still an improvement on the starting position of 2017. Other challenges touched on within the report are, of course, the loss of key personnel within the service, whose departures have been sadly missed and sorely missed. None of those roles have yet been replaced. And as I say, the COVID pandemic has also clearly had a significant impact. In relation to COVID, it's right I should report that certainly during the first wave, our numbers of reported deaths increased, albeit slightly. We were running at about a 10% increase of figures throughout the first wave. As that abated, our figures settled off. Subsequently, our figures remained broadly on par, although the winter rush that we experience normally in October of every year has started later this year. It started in the middle of November, and certainly as the second wave has hit the county hard, our numbers have increased again. The reasons for the increase in numbers, because of course COVID is essentially natural death, are varied. The medical profession, I think, were a little slow to adapt perhaps to the new regulations introduced under the terms of the Coronavirus Act 2020. There was an understandable reluctance by medical practitioners to sign off as natural deaths of patients that doctors hadn't personally seen. And there were also a number of perceived issues with the GPs and the medical profession in relation to satisfying the requirements of the cremation regulations. Listing was problematic throughout the first pandemic. As a service, we were unable to list any cases for inquest throughout the first lockdown. Our cases ceased in mid-March. In fact, we lost a number of listings in early March because families and witnesses indicated they were shielding and were reluctant to travel and put themselves in a position where their health may be at risk. We found that we were unable to hear any cases between the middle of March and the middle of June. From the middle of June onwards, we were able to identify those cases which could proceed on a purely paperwork basis. Families were content not to attend inquests and were content that the evidence be admitted in statement form. And as a consequence of the identification of those cases, we were able to run courts without actual physical attendance of members of the public. That meant that a number of cases were progressed, keeping us ticking over until the beginning of August, when the facilities at the Mile Cross Centre were made available to us. Mile Cross provides us with 2 potential courtrooms. We have limited numbers by virtue of the need to remain COVID safe. The numbers in each courtroom are limited to 12 on any hearing. And as a result of that, the larger and more complicated inquests still remain outstanding. Enquiries are ongoing in relation to the sourcing of individual venues for specific cases. Jury cases are problematic. I currently have a caseload of approximately 15 or 16 cases awaiting juries. It is unlikely that jury cases, with or without the benefit of technology, will proceed much before the spring of next year. In relation to numbers, I can tell the committee that when we went down into lockdown, we had approximately 310 outstanding inquests. We immediately lost 30 listed cases as a result of the inability to progress to hearing, and we lost the ability to list other cases as well over the following months. We peaked at a total of around 390 outstanding cases in the summer. When I took position at the beginning of September, that had reduced to a little over 380. I'm pleased to report, with all due credit to members of the Coroner Service who've worked incredibly hard over the summer, that number has now reduced to about 320. The downside of that is that we have picked really the low-hanging fruit out of our cabinet, and the number of outstanding cases that we have, whilst on a par with where we started, the nature of those cases is that they tend to be the longer and more complicated of the cases that we have. The transformation project remains ongoing. The committee will be familiar with that. I am partaking in many meetings within which the overall scope and infrastructure of the Coroner Service is under review. I welcome that, and I welcome the possibility that there may be a merger with North and North East Lincolnshire in the future. If that bears fruit, then the combined coronial area in terms of headline numbers will put us at I think the 5th largest area nationally. By way of conclusion, I look forward to continuing to provide a service which maintains the bereaved and the loved ones with an appropriate service, and a service which puts them at the heart of the coronial process. I identify the challenges that the lack of a courtroom and suitable office accommodation remain. There are vacancies still within the management structure. COVID remains ongoing, and I have aware also that there are potential difficulties in relation to that which lie ahead. Looking beyond those difficulties, I draw some comfort from the significant progress which the service has made over the last 18 months in relation to timeliness in taking cases to inquest. I draw comfort from the fact that the COVID backlog has been largely diminished, and I welcome the transformation project as an exciting opportunity. And I look forward to the opportunity to lead the area, possibly an enlarged area, with a full complement of management staff, with improved ways of working to continue to deliver a service which the county can be rightfully proud. That completes my report. I'll be happy to deal with any questions, Councillor.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Councillor Stokes, have we got any members wishing to comment?
No, I can't see any in the chat box, Chairman.
Okay, I've got a few questions myself, so if I'll just start going through those and see if any other members come up with any. Paul, if I was to pick anything out of the statistics on of 1.4 on page 107, I'd pick one thing out of that. It would be in 2017, where one thing sticks out as a high number of inquest conclusions for deaths to natural causes. Can we just explain why that was so high at that point in time? Got 112.
In when? Natural causes in 2000 and...
In 2017, did I say 19? 2017. Deaths to natural causes.
2017.
112 there.
Yeah, that is before I joined the service.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
I suspect that is a throwback to the different ways of working, perhaps in Lincoln and in Boston. Of course, as I say, the thrust of an inquest is to identify where things may have gone wrong and to look at making recommendations or drawing those errors to the attention of those in power. It may well be that if you're faced with a post-mortem report which provides a natural cause of death, there are still reasons why the matter needs to go to inquest. Section 4 says that I take a case to inquest if I'm satisfied that it is necessary, notwithstanding that I have a natural cause of death, that it's necessary so to do. I can't comment in detail on 2017 questions before my time, but certainly I suspect it derives from the different ways of working in Boston and Lincoln.
Sure. Okay. Presently, I believe that post-mortems are carried out at, excuse me, Leicester and Nottingham, but they used to all be carried out in Lincolnshire at one point in time. Do you ever see that returning when post-mortems could be carried out in county?
Post-mortems are currently carried out at Leicester, Nottingham and Hull, who went online at the beginning of November this year. The loss of the post-mortem facility at Lincoln is really a matter of regret, and it derives, I think, from the way in which the contractual provisions developed many years ago. One of our biggest expenditure items is the transport of bodies across the county. We are the only coronial area, I think, who doesn't undertake any post-mortems at all within our own county. I would dearly love the facility for post-mortems at Lincoln, not least because it will involve lower expense for my service. It will involve less transportation for the bodies, and I've got issues in relation to the appropriateness of moving bodies considerable distances for the purpose of the post-mortem examination. But I would hope, as the post-mortem procedures develop, it may be possible, and it's an issue for those that provide post-mortem services locally. In an ideal world, we would move to a CT or non-invasive post-mortem scheme. If that could be done at Lincoln by the provision of a CT scanner, we could move our bodies to Lincoln, we could have them scanned. The scan could be viewed either at Lincoln or in another centre. CT scanning removes the need for an invasive procedure in about 70% of cases. So if that could be done locally, we would only have to remove the remaining 30% of bodies to wherever they needed to go for an invasive procedure. So it would benefit the bereaved, it would benefit me because it would be quicker, and it would benefit the local authority because it would be significantly cheaper. Whether Lincoln have the capacity or whether they have the appetite to bid for our work, I don't know. That's being looked at as part of the transformation project. I understand that there is an interest shown. I put it no higher than that. But if that's the case, then certainly it's something that I welcome.
Yeah, I'd be very welcome too. Yeah. I'm aware that Sarah wanted to come in and speak. So, Sarah.
Yeah, I was just going to reinforce what Paul's just said about Lincoln. It is something that we are currently at the start of a retendering process for post-mortem and mortuary facilities. We will need to find new providers for September next year. So that tendering process has just started. So we need to be a little bit careful, but we are doing some market exploration at the moment, including trying to find the appropriate time to have a discussion with Lincoln about what they might be able to provide in the future. Quite interestingly, they already provide some services to North and North East Lincolnshire, which we're in early discussions around merger on.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. Paul, you touched upon the present COVID situation, and I understand that for death registration, it's still carried out over the telephone, and it's one GP to complete the cremation form as opposed to what used to be two.
Yeah.
When we get over COVID, if we ever do, will that go back to two GPs completing the cremation form, or do you think it will stay at one?
I need to direct that to central government, really. The coronavirus provisions remain, I think, for 2 years unless otherwise changed. I suspect once the pandemic is gone, everybody will take stock as to the things emerging from the pandemic legislation which have been a success and those which have not. Quite what happens with CRAM regulations, frankly, your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, sure. But clearly it's been streamlined to be more efficient and to get us through it. But I can't help thinking about a certain Dr. Shipman when we've got one doctor doing it instead of two.
Yeah.
Okay, so just one more thing I think from me is that when talks with North East Lincolnshire and North Lincolnshire, that will make it a really large area, yeah? And what would actually be the benefits of that?
The benefits for the coronal service will mean that we are able to rationalise our services around the county. We would move from having an office in Boston and an office in Lincoln and an office in the north of the county to a more hub and spoke operation. I'm certainly not saying that the local offices in the north and the south would go, but the systems of work would change. We would be able to rely more heavily on the electronic case management system than we do now. And I think with larger numbers, there should come certain economies of scale, which will certainly provide far more power to our elbow when we come to negotiate post-mortems and other additional contracts.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stokes, can you confirm that we've got no one wishing to comment? No members wishing to comment?
Wanting to speak.
Sorry?
Oxby.
Councillor Oxby. So over to Councillor Oxby.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and nice to see you, Paul, and a very comprehensive report. Excellent, in fact. Just one question. You mentioned your peak workload of around 380, which you've got down now to about 320.
Yeah.
I appreciate as you finish one, another one comes in. You know, you close one door and another one opens. Is this a typical workload sort of average? Would you expect it to normally be a bit more or a bit less?
We would normally be running at around 300. Frankly, 300 is too high. And when I have the opportunity to, since I've come in, I've changed the way of working slightly, and I've been focusing on driving down the number of old cases, and that's something which is very close to my heart. If I can drive down the number of open cases to closer to between 200 and 250, that will mean that we have a faster turnaround of cases, which in turn will mean that we get them to inquest more quickly. So, yeah, we were running at about 300 before. Case because of the winter pressures, it climbed up, I said, to 310, 320 last year. 390 was way too many. But we are now making significant inroads into that, and I'm quite sure that with a bit of goodwill and hard work, we can continue to drive it down. The figures are falling swiftly.
Good, thank you very much. Nice to hear that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can't see any other speakers. Okay, I'd just like to say, Paul, thank you for sparing your time to be here with us today, and appreciate how busy you are. And it's good to see that the time was reduced down from 45 weeks, because I'm aware it's a tense period for bereaved families when they cannot put matters to closure and put matters to rest. So I'm pleased you're endeavouring to get those figures down. And we are appreciate we're in a difficult time with COVID. So thank you for all the good work you're doing.
Thank you.
The actions for us are to review and comment on the progress and performance of the service and consider timescales for further reports and actions. So as I say, no one else wishing to speak, so I will propose that the committee receives the report and notes the progress and performance of the coroner service, and that a further report is back to us at the 27th of July meeting. I'll just pause there. Is that okay with you, Paul? Do you think that timescale, and you, Sarah, is okay to bring it back to the 27th of July?
I think from my point of view, that would be fine. The coroner statistics are usually run on a calendar year rather than a financial year. But actually, if we have it in July, we'll have 2020 data plus the finance data. So yeah, that would be okay by me. We'll
so that's where we'll be looking at, but if there is some slippage there, I can't see that would matter.
Yeah, there may also be further papers that come through the committee as part of the proposals around merger, should we get that far. Some very specific papers around merger may come as well. So perhaps you might be a bit fed up with us by the time we get to July. So perhaps we'll review that then, perhaps.
Interesting topic, yeah. So, okay, I've proposed that along with the update of the transformation project and the potential merger with North and North East Lincolnshire. So I've proposed it. Does anyone actually dissent to that? No one dissents, we'll move on. Okay, no, so it's all agreed. So once again, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Sarah, for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on then to item 9, which is the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee Work Programme. This item enables the committee to comment on the content of its work programme for the coming year to ensure that scrutiny activity is focused where it can be of greatest benefit. I understand Nigel West, I think you're going to report on this one.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's Nigel West here. I'm presenting the committee's work programme, which you'll find on page 112 of your pack. Subject to any comments from members, there are no alterations planned for the work programme. You'll see that the next meeting is scheduled for the 26th of January, when there'll be a paper on the budget proposals for next year. And that's the committee's opportunity to scrutinise those areas of the budget that are covered by this particular committee. So I thought I would flag that up. Those comments at that meeting will be passed to the executive prior to their meeting in January, when they make their recommendations to council in February. Unless any members have got anything to add to the programme, that is your programme, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I'll just pause that to see if we have got anyone wishing to speak. No, can't see anyone. So I'll propose that the work programme is approved, and like before, if anyone dissents, please say so in the chat. Nothing forthcoming, Nigel, so that's the work programme agreed.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll now close this part of our committee and resit as the Crime and Disorder Scrutiny Committee. This is item 10 on your agenda. It's the annual review of Prevent. This item provides an update on Prevent activity in Lincolnshire during 2019-20 to enable members to keep a watching brief of Prevent. This report will be presented by Claire Newborn, Interim Head of Service, Community Safety, and Paul Drury, Prevent Officer. And like before, we'll take questions at the end. So over to you, Paul.
Okay. Thank you. It'll actually be me leading on this, and I have the benefit of Paul for the operational detail in case there are any questions that Paul will be better placed to answer than I. So in terms of the paper, this is looking at a bit of a retrospective view of just summarising some key pieces of work around the Prevent agenda since the last paper that was brought before the committee in towards the end of November last year. Going forwards, as just been mentioned in the previous agenda item in terms of the work programme, it would be my intention to look at bringing a paper, and we schedule it at a time where we can do that retrospective look back, but also offer the committee some detail about what the planned intentions are for the coming year, so that the committee is in a position to, excuse me, offer a kind of a view as to the planned intentions going forwards. But for the purposes of this paper, it's very much looking back over the last 12 months. And obviously what you will appreciate, I think, from this paper is that the majority of then this year, we have been subject to some degree of COVID related restrictions, which has had an impact and a bearing on work, but it's by no means stopped work at all. We've still been very active, and hopefully you'll get a sense of that as I work through the paper. So, as I've detailed, under the Counter-Terrorism and Security Act, there's been a duty on Lincolnshire County Council as a responsible authority to have due regard to the need to prevent people from being drawn into terrorism. So that's been since 2015. So this ensures that as an organisation, we do place an appropriate amount of weight on prevent activity, quite rightly. What I have sought to do in the paper, just in the first instance, is to give a bit of a background. The UK, so nationally, the picture is that we continue to be subject to the threat of terrorism quite substantially, and most recently the Joint Terrorism Analysis Centre has assessed that threat as severe, which means an attack is considered to be highly likely. The most significant of the threats on a national basis is considered to be from Al-Qaeda and Daesh, and that's been the case for a number of years. Terrorists associated, though, with extreme right-wing ideologies, and particularly lone actors that might be inspired by those organisations, are also considered to present a risk to our safety and security. So what you will know, obviously, over the most recent terrorist attacks that the country have experienced, a number of those are by lone actors, and that is considered a particular concern. So what I have pointed out here is that that's also coupled with what can only be described as an increasingly sophisticated use of the web and social media by those organisations to spread extremist propaganda, which presents a challenging picture for organisations, but that is something that we are looking at bolstering in terms of our work going forwards, is how we deal with the threat of individuals being radicalised virtually in the virtual environment. So we'll come back to that later. So what we do know, obviously, is that in respect of terrorism, Lincolnshire is assessed to be a low-risk area. But the basis on which we work is that we don't want to be complacent at all. We're not invincible, if you like, and that potentially there could be a threat to the county. So we're not complacent by any means, and we work with that in mind. So underneath that, I then mention and just cover off the government's strategies in respect of terrorism. But primarily, this report is concerned with the county's role in delivering, the council's role in delivering one element of the contest strategy, and that's prevent. So this is very much looking at what work we do to reduce the threat from terrorism, or from stopping people becoming terrorists or supporting terrorism. Apologies. There are three objectives under the prevent agenda, one of which is to tackle the causes of radicalisation and respond to the challenge of terrorism. The second is to safeguard and support those who perhaps are most at risk of being radicalised through early intervention, so by identifying them and then offering them appropriate support. And then to enable those who have already engaged in terrorism to disengage and rehabilitate. So what does this look like in terms of our duty? Apologies, I'm just going to have to take a drink. Thank you. So in terms of our duty, it's incumbent on us to be able to demonstrate that we have in the county an awareness and an understanding of what radicalisation and the risk of radicalisation looks like in Lincolnshire. It also means that it's incumbent on us to demonstrate that we actively cooperate with other bodies within the county, and hopefully I'll demonstrate that further on in the paper. It's also incumbent on us to ensure that staff who engage with the general public are suitably trained to be able to identify where individuals may be being targeted and may be being drawn into terrorism or extreme ideology. So hopefully I've touched on that. In terms of the subheadings, that's what I've endeavoured to do, is to give you some assurance as to activity that's taking place under those areas of activity. The County Council has a very robust framework in place in terms of governance and leadership. In terms of management and coordination, it's important to note that the Prevent Agenda and the Prevent Officer now sits within the Safer Communities Service in the Resources Directorate. That was a move in April of this year. The purpose of the Safer Communities Service is to prevent crime and enhance community safety. And to do so, there's a number of strategies, but one of those strategies is to do so by facilitating effective partnership working. So actually the Prevent Agenda, I think, sits really neatly within our service. And also enables us to draw on some of the other resources that sits within the service to bolster the work around Prevent. So the specified authorities, of which we're one, it is incumbent on us, as I've mentioned, to work in collaboration with others. We do this through an already well-established multi-agency Prevent steering group in the county. Lincolnshire County Council is a key contributor to that because we chair that meeting and we provide administrative support to the group. We are blessed in Lincolnshire in terms of the membership of that steering group by partners. We get really good representation just in terms of the breadth of agencies who contribute to that group, but not just their attendance, but their really active involvement in the Prevent Agenda. I've detailed within the paper those organisations that do take part in that steering group. And as I say, we are one of the very few nationally who have also secured third sector involvement in that group. So that is a very well established group. It's been meeting as usual throughout this year, regardless of the COVID restrictions. What that group also does have responsibility for is to ensure that the risks that are identified that may be relevant to Lincolnshire, that we actually have an action plan to detail how we intend to deal with those risks. Now, one thing that I've tried to detail within this paper is that one of the pieces of work that is recent, literally just as we speak, that has been undertaken is a counter-terrorism local profile. And that details then an assessment of the local risk of terrorism and radicalisation. And the steering group we've done a piece of work recently where we've gathered information from partners to feed into that piece of work. It is actually the Lincolnshire Police's special branch Prevent Officer who leads on that piece of work. But again, that's not done in isolation, that's done as a partnership piece of work. And that's just been done. We have a steering group next week where the findings of that piece of work will be shared with partners. And then as a consequence of that, we will look to review our plans of activity to ensure that they reflect the findings of that plan. to make sure we very much, that's about targeting our efforts and resources on the areas that need that attention. So we also then have some subgroups that sit under that strategic group, including a community engagement subgroup and a communication subgroup, just to ensure that we are very joined up in our direct work with communities, and also our communications and messaging across the county. So one of the things I then move on to is, excuse me, it's just I've been fine all morning, and then the minute I need to speak, I then have a difficulty speaking.
Take it on.
A key element of, excuse me, let me go on mute a minute. Apologies for that, I'm now back, suitably refreshed. A key element of the Prevent delivery is Channel. Channel is a multi-agency meeting. It's where we discuss individuals who may be at a very early stage of being vulnerable to being drawn into terrorism or support for terrorist organisations. The process is managed by a statutory channel panel, and again, the County Council plays a really integral role within this. We chair and the panel. We also deputy chair that panel and administrate for it. Again, there's representation across a number of organisations, which again I've detailed within the report. And the nature of the panel is to assess the nature and extent of the risk and decide on the most appropriate support to protect and prevent those people being drawn into or being radicalised and drawn into terrorism. It is a voluntary programme, so individuals must consent to receive the support. The support can range from accessing mainstream services such as health and education, the wider family receiving support. We do know the family is a really important support mechanism for these individuals, so it's not just how we support the individual, but also how we might be able to support the wider family. It also can include some diversionary activities, such as appropriate training courses. It can cover all manner of activities, but that just is to give you a flavour of some of the elements of the support plans that are can be put in place for individuals who may be referred into that panel. Obviously, we keep those plans under constant review and routinely reassess any risk and vulnerabilities, and to ensure that we're focusing on the right individuals. Can I just pause there just to give people an opportunity to ask any questions before I move into training and development?
Okay, Claire, thank you for that. I can't see anyone wishing to comment. Can you just confirm that, Councillor Stokes?
Yeah, I can't see anyone wanting to speak, Chairman, either.
Okay, so only when you're ready, Claire, you carry on.
Thank you. Moving on. Okay, so one of the things, as I was saying, is one of the responsibilities we have is ensuring that any staff who engage with the public, that might be front facing, but equally anybody who has some element of public interaction, if you like, are suitably trained in Prevent. So I've detailed within this is one of the things that has been affected by the COVID restrictions, as detailed by other people in their papers earlier on in this meeting. A number of our training events were historically and have been up until recently delivered face to face, which obviously then was impacted by COVID. That's not a bad thing. It's required us to be much more innovative in terms of how we've still delivered our material to individuals and ensure that people do receive training. So to the point now that we do have obviously our original kind of face-to-face offer, but also a number of material that we've now created a virtual online offer. And so going forwards, we do now have a blended model of training to offer individuals to suit people as and when. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, I don't think, that it's required us to develop and improve our training offer. So the training and briefing sessions are free to all agencies. I've detailed within the paper who they are ordinarily delivered to. So that's all Lincolnshire County Council employees. It's a mandated training package that all employees have to undertake once every 5 years. And that's from frontline waste management services to back office staff, right up to school crossing patrols. Also all Lincolnshire County Council commissioned or grant funded service providers, again, we open this offer to district council colleagues, educational establishments. They also share this legal duty. So from childminders and nurseries through to governors, safeguarding leads within primary and secondary schools. And also there is an offer to community groups. There's always a healthy level of take-up, and actually the take-up still remained healthy during the course of 2020. What has caused a little bit of we were limited whilst we moved from a face-to-face offer to developing that virtual offer. There was a little bit of a lag between those wanting the training and us being able to offer that kind of virtual training offer. But nonetheless, there's still been 471 face-to-face or interactive workshops, should I describe them. So either face-to-face or via a workshop via Microsoft Teams to Lincolnshire County Council staff. There's been 1,146 Lincolnshire County Council staff who have undertaken and completed the Prevent e-learning package through our Links to Learn site. And then there's been 77 sessions, which has then meant that 1,057 staff, that's district councils, schools and academies, LCC Commission service providers and community groups have had those Prevent awareness sessions. So still no mean feat to have delivered that in what has been a more challenging year. And we have predominantly that then just falls to Paul as our dedicated Prevent officer. So a real success, I think, within this challenging few months. I have touched on there that the preference for interactive workshops is deliberate. We do have the e-learning packages and we will always have that to offer. But what we do tend to find, and from the feedback that we have from attendees, is that the interactive workshops can facilitate more meaningful engagement and discussion and debate on what can be sometimes quite a sensitive issue. So we will always ensure that that is part of our delivery model going forward. What we do know is that our online sites, forums and profiles, as I alluded to earlier, of an extremist nature are in abundance and can be easily accessed by individuals. And so our training offer going forward will ensure in the coming months, we're going to look at that to develop a new presentation that is designed for practitioners, safeguarding leads to help them tackle this online risk, if you like. That's something we're very mindful of in our plan going forwards. There is a recognition that our extensive network of voluntary and community sector providers are critical partners in Prevent. That's why we're really keen for them to be engaged with our Prevent steering group. And that is why going forwards, we do currently, but going forwards, we will continue to offer training to voluntary and community sector providers within the county. We also are conscious that our member development training that would ordinarily be delivered by Paul and Riz, who's our County Terrorism Special Branch Prevent Officer, has not taken place this year, again because of the consequences of COVID-19. Ordinarily, that would be a yearly offer, and that is something that we will prioritise for members in the new year. I have then touched on, I'm not going to go into it in a huge amount of detail. Ordinarily, the cornerstone of our Prevent work is with local communities and our civil organisations. Sorry, somebody did want to speak. Shall I pause there to give somebody an opportunity?
Here we go. Councillor Linda Wharton wishes to speak. Do you want to come in there then, Linda?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Claire, for all the information within your report. I've just got one question on channel, please. You say it's a voluntary for people to be involved in the programme. How many people have you had come into the system through channel?
Thank you, Councillor Linda Wharton. It's sometimes a bit difficult to offer you the detail you might wish for, given some of the sensitivities and some of the security that's wrapped around Prevent. We do track that as a steering group. We do receive information on those numbers so that we can track trends and just assess whether we're seeing particular spikes or dips in numbers of referrals. It is interesting, though, that we tend not to be as overly concerned about numbers. And the reason why I say that is deliberate, that Prevent is very different, say, to Safeguarding Adult and other Safeguarding Children forums in that there isn't a threshold. We don't apply a threshold to Prevent. And that's national, that's not a local arrangement. So there isn't a requirement, it isn't incumbent on any referrer to be able to evidence a certain, degree of things that we'd need to see for us to say, yes, that individual needs to be discussed at the channel panel. It is much more subjective to that, and as a consequence, we can have fluctuations in referrals, is what I would say, because people will bring referrals to us that can be quite varied in terms of the nature of both the individual and the concern that they have about that individual. What we also then do monitor, and I can assure you we do that very carefully, is what we do look at is the organisations and individuals who refer into the channel panel. What we do ordinarily see is we'll have a greater number of referrals from schools, because ordinarily, again, because we're talking prevention and early intervention, a number of the individuals we see within that we discuss within panel do tend to be earlier years, so they will tend to be teenage years rather than adults. So it won't be surprising then to hear that we will tend to see schools as the primary referrer, but we do tend to have a consistent number, but I'm very limited as to the detail as to how much I can share in terms of that level of detail, as frustrating as that might well be, but and I hope you can appreciate that.
I do. I think you'd make a good politician. I'll say.
Thank you. I'm learning a lot from you. I'm sure as a committee. Thank you.
Thank you,
Claire. I'm aware time's pressing on.
Yeah.
And no way do I want to rush you, but
no.
Carry on.
Yeah, thank you. And as I say, the only thing I was going to touch on is that we do have a number of engagement events and workshops that that we're really, and Paul spends a lot of his time with in the local community with both parish councils, town and parish councils, community groups, faith groups, third sector organisations, and some of that has been limited. Paul's ability to do that has been limited this year, as you well know, by COVID. Will be reprioritised as restrictions are lifted, as I'm sure there will be at some point, and that again will refocus our efforts and energies on that. One of the things that I would just touch on really as a final point really is what we do know nationally and locally is that young people are particularly vulnerable, amongst the most vulnerable to extremist narratives, and so they will continue to be a particular focus for our activity. I've mentioned some of the things that are happening as we speak, particularly in the east of the county in respect of that. But one of the things we do intend to do is capitalise on the organisations and the assets that we have within the Safer Community Service, and actually use our avenues that we have into schools within the secondary and sixth form schools and colleges to deliver more work directly with pupils around prevention messaging, just so that they can appreciate the risks that there are, not just in terms of prevent, but risks generally that are online, and what they can do to guard themselves against it, and what support's available to them if they wish to kind of talk about that in more detail if they do have some concerns. I don't intend to then mention any more. We are back in March, I understand, with a paper around the plan for future work in respect of prevent. So this was more about summarising the year that has just been. If anybody has any further comments, I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you, Claire. I can't see anyone wishing to speak. Councillor Stokes, unless you advise me differently.
No, I can't see anyone else, Chairman, at all.
Okay, Claire, thank you for your very comprehensive report. Yeah, a lot of detail there, thank you. Does Paul wish to mention anything at this as we bring it to a conclusion? Paul Drury?
No, Chair, I've left it all to Claire.
Okay, thank you for that then. So the actions of this committee is we're invited to consider the contents of this report and comment on the council's role in meeting its statutory responsibilities under the Counter-Terrorism and Security Act of 2015. Again, I'm going to propose that the committee receives the report and is satisfied with the prevent activity undertaken in 2019-2020 to meet the council's statutory responsibilities. Yeah, so I've proposed it, and does anyone dissent? If not, we'll take it as agreed. No one's dissenting, so thank you, that's agreed. That brings us now to the end of the meeting, and it concludes the business of the meeting. Thank you for everyone for your attendance. You may now leave the meeting by using the red phone icon on the taskbar to end the call. And once again, thank you all for your input today, officers and members alike. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you, Chairman.